Hello, everybody. I just got done streaming a relatively short stream of Noel and the Moral Fate. I ended up finishing that thing a lot sooner than I expected it to. So I'm pleased to be able to say that we're now going to be doing a follow-up episode starting with Higurashi When They Cry Ho Plus. So the first story arc that we're going to be covering with this thing is called Outbreak. Yeah, I know, no Japanese name or anything like that here. And, well, the summary of the thing, based on what I know so far, is relatively simple. A mysterious outbreak hits Hinamizawa, and it causes quite a crazy panic. And that's pretty much all I know. So, mysterious virus, my first thought is maybe it's some kind of experimental strain of Hinamizawa syndrome or something like that. But if it isn't, then, well, yeah, that's certainly going to complicate matters quite a bit, potentially. Whatever this thing is, I seriously doubt it's smallpox. So, as I mentioned in my little rambling preamble in the beginning, actually, I'll let this play out first. Eastman01, hey, welcome to the stream. I did see a notification for your comment on my last Higurashi stream a few days ago. I've yet to respond to it, but I will sometime after this. So I would keep an eye out for any replies from me on that. But I just want to let you know I have seen your message. I just haven't taken the time to properly respond to it yet. And hello. I believe this might be the first time we've seen a 3D asset rendered in a CG video in this series. Well, actually, no. Maybe some of the flies were, now that I think about it. I think I might actually remember seeing some 3D rendered flies in some of these opening cinematics. So, yeah, right, as I was saying before I decided to let the intro cinematic play out, I actually ran into a bit of trouble getting this thing set up initially. Not with the game itself and the actual modding process, but rather actually getting my hands on a copy of this thing. And it ended up bleeding into my streaming time today. Because I originally wanted to start doing the Noel stream an hour and a half before I actually started that, before moving on to this thing. But, well, long story short, I ran into some hassles purchasing a copy of this thing from Manga Gamer's website, and then getting this set up, and then running into a bunch of other little things that ended up slowing me down, and, well, yeah, that ended up eating a lot more time than I initially expected it to. But fortunately, everything seems to be in working order. Although I do have the audio for this thing set to the Jin/Ho BGM 2014 option. Because I was pondering for 15 minutes straight after I set this thing up initially which audio preset I wanted to set this thing to. Because each and every one of them seems to have their pros and cons. But I ultimately went with the original Jin/Ho BGM from 2014 because, number one, it promises to present the audio from BGM and sound effects and all that fun stuff to the original Japanese release when it first came out. So I thought that would probably be best just from a presentation standpoint. And number two, it sounded to me, based on what I'd read on all these summaries here, that this option is the least likely to have any potential issues when it comes to either tone consistency or any other kind of inconsistency or audio issue for that matter. So I don't know if this is actually for sure the best option I could have chosen for this thing, but for now at least, I'm going to just roll with it, and I'm going to assume that it'll be okay. But other than that, I got the usual things set up here. We have the voice matching settings set to 0, so we have a completely original PC script with voices where it fits, fully uncensored. But some of the uncensored scenes may be missing some voice dialogue, so there will probably be some portions where I will have to do some of the voice work for the characters for them, because it might be censored dialogue. Fair enough. I haven't gotten to see the VOD of the last stream yet. Gotcha. Well, when you do, I hope you enjoy it. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this started. So right off the bat, this is a very interesting difference in presentation from the previous arcs, even with the mods enabled. And this scenario is currently locked. I have to unlock it by clearing Outbreak. I can also remove the scenario lock from the Omake screen via the title menu, intended for those who already cleared Ho Plus. So this is interesting that they actually, in Ho Plus, actually lock some of these scenarios and require you to actually play other scenarios first before they unlock. I don't think any of the other ones ever did that, outside of the connecting fragments in the main story. So that's very interesting to me. So we've got Outbreak right here, and then there is Hinamizawa bus stop. So, let's see what this says. Welcome to Hinamizawa. This is a slightly unusual fragment. The original fragment which would eventually grow into Higurashi When They Cry. The difficulty is Genesis. It all started from here. So, okay, so yeah, this is based on what I remember reading off the Steam page. So, yeah, I believe this is this is essentially the concept story that ended up evolving into Higurashi proper, what this thing is right here. So I definitely want to check that out for sure, but we'll do that after Outbreak. So we can just consider this as a bit of a detour on our way to whatever this locked scenario right here is, after we get through Outbreak. So, Outbreak. Keiichi and the others face a brand new tragedy. The mysterious virus and the panic it creates are such laughable sights. The difficulty is average. Is this the beginning of the end? Or has it already reached its conclusion? It's your job to bear witness to that. And hello. What's going on here? Seems like YouTube's acting kind of wonky for me right now. I don't know if it's my connection or not. Sounds like the music and connecting fragments, and they've got fragment shapes. Yeah. Again, it's a very interesting choice in presentation compared to the previous arcs. Well, this is weird. This thing's definitely not acting normal right now. But on my monitoring equipment, it seems like the actual connection from my end seems okay, going out to you guys. I'm just going to assume that it's something on my other equipment here that's just acting wonky right now, so I'll just ignore it for the time being. So let's get started. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons or organizations is entirely coincidental. We only got one portion of the sound novels left. Can't believe the end is almost in sight. June 27th, Monday, day 1.
こちらは陸上自衛隊です。本日0400よりHinamizawa地区以下県知事が定めた地域は貿易隔離されました。
Damn, we got the damn self-defense force in here already?
住民の皆さんはご自宅へ待機をお願いいたします。防災無線やテレビ、ラジオ等での情報収集に努めてください。
So we're already clearly in the midst of whatever this outbreak is. So my question right out of the gate is, how long has this thing been going on for already?
貿易上の安全が確認されるまで当地区からの離脱はできません。繰り返します。当地区からの離脱はできません。これに従わない場合、国内法によって処罰されます。どうか皆さん、自宅に戻り冷静な対応をお願いいたします。
It was really hard to hear that rough voice over the roar of their camouflaged helicopter.
ウイルスが検出されたとのことです。これは WHO 世界保健機構が指定するウイルスの中でも最も危険な分類に入るもので、
Oh, this thing managed to get the attention of the WHO, eh?
アメリカ政府よりワクチンの緊急援助の申し出があったことをすでに複数の政府筋が認めており、政府は受け入れの対応に入ったものと思われます。このウイルスは潜伏期間が30日から50日ほどで、隔離された住民2000人分のワクチン確保が急務となっています。
30 to 50 days. What are the symptoms?
南沢地警は電話が殺到しており、ほとんどが普通となっています。県防災本部では事態把握に支障が出かねないとして、
なお水道水、井戸水の使用を厳禁します。飲料水は自衛隊給水車によるもの以外は使用しないでください。また路上への違法な駐車は災害救援を妨げます。直ちに移動をさせてください。
I guess they, whatever this thing is here, they're cutting off access to tap water and well water in order to ensure that there's no cross-contamination with any water sources. So whatever this thing is, it's highly contagious.
社名党の貝原代表は自衛隊の災害派遣命令に対し適切な手順が省かれた問題を指摘し、これを軍国主義へ回帰するものとして激しく非難。アジアでの一層の孤立化を招くものとして、
こちらは災害対策本部です。本日12時より以下に定める場所にて一斉診察が行われます。町会、自治会の指示に従って参集してください。特別な事情がない限り必ず受診してください。体調に異常が認められる方は必ずその旨。
こちらは陸上自衛隊です。当地区は貿易上の理由から県知事の判断により緊急に隔離されました。隔離地区からの離脱はできません。皆さんへの食料、飲料水、生活必需品、電力、通信の自由は保障されます。どうか冷静な対応をお願いいたします。
All of a sudden, one day, the peaceful boredom of everyday life was shattered. I doubt anyone woke up today expecting it to be any different from an ordinary early summer morning. The sky was just as blue as ever, and the sun rose just as it always did. Yet, the helicopters flying at low altitudes with their speakers blaring, and the sight of traffic backed up at the blockade on the main road into the city were enough to let everyone know that this morning was anything but normal. If anything, I'd say this is abnormal even by Higurashi standards. Which is saying a lot, I'd say. By the time it was broadcast on the morning news, the confusion had already settled down to a degree. The residents of Hinamizawa couldn't act like this was all happening in some distant city as they listened to the emergency broadcasts. Well, now that I think about it, maybe it's not that much out of the ordinary. Because there was no doubt that this emergency was happening in the very town we lived in. I stirred restlessly in my bed like I usually did before eventually crawling out. When I came down to our dining room, I found my parents glued to the television, which is where I learned the news, peeking over their shoulders. I wonder just how many villagers muttered the same thing I did at first. Yeah, people usually don't get to... Yeah, people usually don't get to leave during an emergency, and well, when we're dealing with a quarantine issue here, I mean, makes sense, because you don't want any pathogens or parasites or anything that's highly contagious of that nature to spread beyond a quarantine zone if you can help it. Because if it's something really nasty, like, I don't know, Ebola or something, yeah, that would not be a good thing to have hit a major population center. And I know I'm just stating the obvious here, but yeah. But I'm real curious to know what this virus is. If it is a virus.
Hinamizawa がね、悪いウイルスが見つかったとかで隔離されちゃったんですって。
Okay, so they discovered the disease here in Hinamizawa and nowhere else? If so, then my first thought again is it Hinamizawa syndrome?
困ったな。これいつ解除になるんだ？明日大阪のイベントの打ち合わせに出なきゃならないってのにな。
Dado, I think we got bigger problems than you missing out on a meeting, given the present circumstances. If anything, I would start washing your hands a lot more.
隔離って、じゃあ街へも出られないってこと？
そうみたいね。食料の援助とかはあるそうだけど、困ったわ。今日沖宮で特売があるからって冷蔵庫の中ほとんど食材がないのよ。
それよりこのなんとかウイルスはどういうもんなんだ？隔離ってくらいだから相当恐ろしいもんなんだろう？そのウイルスはどうなってんだ？うちにも感染してるってのか？
Assuming that this is Hinamizawa syndrome that we're dealing with here, that begs the obvious question. What exactly happened within this particular timeline that's causing this current quarantine to happen as it's happening right in front of us? Because this is something that we don't normally see start to happen until Project Doomsday, as I call it, starts to go into effect after Rika ends up getting killed. So I'm assuming Rika is still alive right now, right? Yeah, actually, I should wait and see if we can confirm Rika's status before I make any solid assumptions about at least some things one way or the other. Remember to boil water before washing. Yeah, that kills any bacteria and viruses that might be and parasites that might be inside the water too. General good rule of thumb to do if you're purifying your own water, even if there is no outbreak or anything to go on to, because I mean, you never know what might be in there, especially if you're someone who collects rainwater or something. It's always a good rule of thumb to always have a bunch of stuff to clean your water if you can.
今テレビでその説明してるよ。発症すると1週間ほどで以下の症状がって。
Okay, here we go. Symptoms. This might be able to tell me something right here. Our entire family. No, I'm sure everyone in the village went speechless as that footage played. A small African village was completely annihilated, and the terrible spectacle was almost too gory to look at. Wait, this virus appeared in Africa? Africa. Wait. That's the continent where Ebola originated, right? Don't remember off the top of my head. Actually, why don't I take a look on that right now? I seriously doubt it actually is Ebola, but since I'm thinking about it right now, I kind of want to look it up. Okay, Ebola virus. Or disease, rather. I'm loath to use Wikipedia, but... So... History. It was just... Okay, so it showed up in 2 simultaneous outbreaks in Nazareth in South Sudan, a town in South Sudan, and the other in Yambuku, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay, so near a village near the Ebola River. Okay, yeah, I was wrong about being Africa. But I do remember it was named after a river in which it supposedly originated nearby from, the Ebola River. I remember that little detail at least. Didn't they say they suspected the tap water 10 minutes ago? Yeah, they did say that, so whatever it is, it might be in the water. But they're showing footage from a village in Africa, so wherever it was, so that tells me that that whatever this thing is, it's not limited exclusively to the Hinamizawa region, so it might be a foreign virus that just somehow managed to find its way here. That's what I'm thinking anyway, currently. Okay, a small African village was completely annihilated, and the terrible spectacle is almost too gory to look at, given the unrecognizable state of the resulting corpses. The people out of this danger's reach were being irresponsible, and satisfying their urge to spectate, watching this footage of the harm dealt by this mysterious, heretofore unknown virus. Okay, so it is the same virus then. So yeah, this thing has shown up in other places around the world too. It's not limited to just Hinamizawa. So it's possible this did come outside the village from somewhere. But for those of us directly faced with this crisis, it was far too real and far too terrifying. I suddenly glanced up at the clock and saw that it was long past time for me to meet up with Reina. I was already late. Normally, Reina would have come to pick me up directly if it was over 5 minutes past our meeting time. But that didn't happen this morning, probably because she's locked up in her house too right now. That's why I told Keiichi's dad to boil water before washing his hands. Yeah, again, good rule of thumb for situations like these. Of course not. I'm sure Reina's also glued to the TV along with her family right about now. Either that, or maybe she's currently infected with this mysterious virus and is suffering under its symptoms. Well, we don't know that for sure yet, so if you want to confirm it, I would get a cardboard box and start sneaking around the village, solid snake style. The moment that thought reached my mind, I started worrying about not just her, but Mion, Sadako, and Rika-chan as well. Yeah, speaking of which, so since this virus has shown up in other places around the world and likely isn't exclusive to it didn't originate from the Hinamizawa region, then that probably means that Rika is alive. So this isn't part of the normal plan to eradicate the village in order to create a controlled disaster by killing the queen carrier of Hinamizawa syndrome. So it's nothing like that, probably. I ran for a telephone in the hallway on impulse and tried dialing a number, but I didn't even hear the usual dial tone, probably because of the congestion on the traffic on the phone lines. It made sense. The whole village and the population of those outside with relatives in the area probably went for their receivers all at once, just as I had. It was reasonable to assume that the phone lines couldn't keep up. That left me wanting to visit them, to make sure of their safety in person. But the whole village could be full of pockets of that dangerous virus. Wouldn't it be suicide to barge outdoors in that case? It could, well... Okay, so... We know it's likely in the water. Because they wants to avoid tap and well water, so it's probably in the groundwater and stuff like that at the moment. So it might not be airborne. We don't know that for sure yet. So it might, but if it's not airborne and it's limited to just the water, then it might actually be safe to go out as long as you keep your distance from other people. Something else? My dad was just coming out of his atelier. His arms were full of cardboard boxes. Hey! There's a cardboard box right there! From what I could see, they were packed full of duct tape wrapped in unopened vinyl bags. Apparently my dad had them in stock to use with his paintings or something. I didn't even question why he grabbed duct tape in this emergency. I understood immediately why my dad was calling me for it to help. Yeah, okay, that's smart, because if this thing is airborne, you want to seal up any cracks in which it could sneak its way in.
クーラーも外気とつながってるかもしれんな。クーラーは噴出口を新聞紙で覆って、それからガムテープでしっかりと止めるんだ。父さんは1階をやるからな。母さんは台所を頼む。
お父さん、今さらそんなことしても仕方ないでしょ。ガムテープなんかじゃ極小のウイルスを防ぐ効果なんて全然ないわよ。
Yeah, that's actually a fair point, because if this virus has been in the area for a while and it's got an incubation period of 30 to 50 days, then there's a good chance that a wide chunk of the population already has this thing, and they might not be showing symptoms yet. Could include us too, for that matter. So it might already be too late for all we know. Worst case scenario.
それでも少しは違うだろうが、いいから母さんもやりなさい。
My dad's tone made it clear he wasn't going to suffer any objections. But my mom was right. She was being relatively calm given the situation. Viruses are tiny organisms smaller than even dust. So it was pretty delusional to think that sealing up openings with store-bought duct tape could keep them out. At the same time, I understood how my dad was feeling too. It was just so sudden. Even if there was no scientific backing to his beliefs, and even though it wouldn't make any difference, he still had to try and do something to stop it. That would comfort his mind far more than just sitting in front of the television. Whenever my mom, oddly stubborn, and my father, wildly emotional, started arguing like that, I go up to the second floor to avoid them. My mom was right. I knew we couldn't really do anything to prevent infection. If you seal all windows and doors and block all ventilation, how long until the house runs out of air and you suffocate? Well, that's the thing. I don't know if they actually fully seal every single little potential crack or hole or any source of ventilation in the house to prevent any and all oxygen from going in or out. But assuming for the sake of argument that they somehow could do that, then if I had to wager a guess, based on the size of the house, I would say maybe 3 to 4 hours maybe 3 to 4 hours at the most. The air would be breathable, will be safe enough to breathe before it stops being the case. So not terribly long at all, but definitely wouldn't happen too quickly either. So I'm going to assume that they're not going to be able to seal this house up to a point here where they'll be able to completely cover any, prevent any oxygen intake into the house. So on one hand, that will allow them to continue to be able to get some oxygen in the house and allow them to breathe. But on the other hand, if this thing is airborne, then there's still going to be some areas in which this virus could still get into the house if it hasn't already, and already started infecting everybody. Oh. Okay, guess we'll see just what ends up happening. Just how the story wants to play this as far as realism goes. I looked out the window. The grand sight before me was a view I took pride in, one that moved me deeply when I first arrived here. The magnificent scenery itself was the same view as always of Hinamizawa's beautiful traditional buildings. Yet today, there was no sight of any villagers. I couldn't spot a single villager out working in the paddy fields. I was certain that the stubborn old farmers wouldn't ditch their work, even today. I was certain but that silly hope of mine was shattered. To be honest, that made me realize I was hoping to find solace in the sight of them carry on like normal. Even the most stubborn of the village elders weren't working out at their fields. Maybe they were afraid of getting infected with the virus. Or maybe they were afraid of another villager thinking they were infected instead. In that sense, my dad's amateur idea of trying to keep the virus out with duct tape might be the more normal response, instead of questioning its effectiveness like my mom was doing. The village was shrouded in a silent fear. The only sounds to be heard were the voices over the disaster management radios and the roar of the SDF's helicopters. Those sounds only served to make the silence more chilling. Normally, the chorus of cicadas would be starting around this time. Sounds like it's starting up to me. But their chorus didn't reach the villagers' ears. They're reaching my ears just fine. June 28th, Tuesday, day 2. You know, now that I think about it, they would have to go outside, at least temporarily, in order to get supplies from the SDF helicopters, including water and rations and stuff like that. So, just on that basis alone, I really don't think there's really much point in trying to seal up any little cracks or holes or ventilation, period. Because, I mean, the second you step foot outside in order to get some supplies, I mean, you're exposed to whatever is in the air, no matter what. So it's either let yourself starve or / potentially suffocate in your own house, or feed yourself, risk catching something which you may already have in your system anyway that's currently incubating, and well, yeah, it's just way I see it. You're kind of trapped between a rock and a hard place in a situation like this. So just pick your poison, I guess. With the water supply shut off, we couldn't use our flush toilet. Oh dear. Oh, that's not good. The SDF relief squad had set up portable bathrooms, but since my dad was strongly opposed to using them, the My Bar family continued to use our flush toilets without any running water. So what are you using? Are you just pouring down helicopter water from the SDF in order to get it to go down? It's kind of a waste of drinkable water given the current circumstances. Like, why be opposed to the portable toilets? Why? Just why? Are they uncomfortable to use or something to an absurd degree? We had kept our bath water to use for laundry, so we were managing by scooping that into the basin and flushing it away. Okay, I see. According to my dad, the excrement of disease carriers would just be full of viruses. Yeah, that's true. It would be. So we refused to let our family go out and use the public bathrooms, saying that it was the same as going out to get ourselves infected. We didn't have that much water left in our bathtub, though, so we couldn't keep using a flush toilet without water forever. To make matters worse, since the virus involved here has a 1-month incubation period, that's at its quickest. With 50 days, it could be around 2 months max. It wasn't hard to imagine the quarantine around Hinamizawa would last even longer than that. By my mom's quick estimate, the quarantine was likely to last 3 months. 3 months of this? Oh, damn. 3 whole months. That's assuming that, yeah, that's a generous estimate, though. Who's to say it won't last longer than that? It was the end of June, so the quarantine wouldn't be lifted until the end of summer or maybe even October. Hey, Irie, you got a nice big expensive government-funded lab? Maybe you can get to work on finding a vaccine or a cure for this thing? Reminds me of 2020. Oh, you mean the COVID lockdowns? Yeah, kind of reminds me of that too. Definitely a period in my life I definitely don't want to remember. That meant that the whole summer of 1983 was going to be cut away from Hinamizawa. It was very tragic for us. On the first day, we were caught up in the fear that the virus was everywhere outside of our house. But then the water trucks and relief supplies arrived, thanks to the SDF, and once their doctors started their group examinations, we couldn't afford to stay completely shut inside any longer. Some people, like my dad, still refused to go outside even then, but they steadily started coming outside over time, both to secure necessities and assuage their fear of infection by having the doctors examine them. The same went for me. I couldn't stand staying cooped up in our creepy house with its duct-tape shutters, silently watching the television with no one but my family around. I was much more anxious to go outside and check on my friends' well-being. My dad continued to be stubborn about holding in the house, so my exasperated mom and I went to the group examinations together. Thinking about it now, I would imagine that Mion in the Sonozaki family estate, even if she would be isolated in there, she would at least have the entire estate to be able to walk around in, so she wouldn't be holed up in your average size house. So she would have, figuratively and literally speaking, more actual breathing room to work with. So she's probably faring the best out of everybody, just on that alone, along with all the resources that the Sonozaki estate probably has under their roof. Shion lives outside of Hinamizawa. Wait a minute. Yeah, wait. No, the other nearby town here is also part of the same prefecture, isn't it? The same region? So that's probably under lockdown too. And if it is, then, well, she's probably in a similar predicament to us, because her apartment is really not much bigger than a regular sized apartment. So her circumstances are probably comparable to Keiichi's. Sadako and Rika, on the other hand, well, they live in that little backdoor shed right behind the Fruity estate, so they've arguably got the most enclosed space to work with out of everybody. So they're probably not faring the worst out of everyone just on that basis alone. They probably don't have too much in terms of food and water and resources they can keep at any length of time either. As for Reina, well, who knows? She hoards a lot of crap, but I don't know how much of it would do any good under a quarantine. Keiichi has a big house, at least. Yeah, he's got that going for him, at least. So, in some ways, he's faring better than some of the others, but not as good as people like, say, Mion, for example, I would say. Again, it's all speculation on my part, but I think it's reasonable speculation given what I know of their living conditions. I need a drink. Yep, we even got medical tents in front of the school. The town council our family fell under had decided to conduct examinations in the schoolyard. Lots of the villagers had gathered there, and we were all lined up according to the divisions used for the council's newsletters. The disparity between the villagers in their normal clothes and the doctors covered head to toe in a white coat-like rain suit was very unsettling. It was clear evidence that they suspected us all of being carriers of the virus. Well, I mean, they kind of have to make that assumption until you're proven to be safe. It's the pragmatic and rational thing to do, given the current circumstance. It's the only way to really be sure. It's unfortunate, but I can't really fault them for their approach. Hey, there we go. You seem to be okay at the moment.
Oh, Rena! よかったぜ。無事だったか。
さっきみーちゃんに会ったよ。みーちゃんも元気そうだった。
Okay, so she seems to be doing okay too.
そうか。さとこやリカちゃんは？
リカちゃんたちは懲戒区分が違うと思うから他の場所に集合してると思うよ。何度か電話してるんだけど繋がらないの。
俺も何度か電話してるが全然ダメだ。やっぱり電話が殺到してパンクしてるんだろうな。
Ushi probably fares the worst. Old and police, so he has to expose himself. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about Ushi. But yeah, you're right. He would have to expose himself because he's part of the police. But even so, he's a detective. He's not part of the regular rank and file force. So I'm not sure how much of a role he would actually have to play in situations like these, unless the police force is short enough on manpower. But then again, this is a quarantine situation that's affecting the entire region, so it is likely, now that I think about it, that every single member of the police force, outside of the commanding officers, are probably all being made to work to try to help with the quarantine. So yeah, he's probably in the most dangerous situation out of everybody.
Zietaiの人の言うことを聞かないで暴走した車が事故で電柱を倒しちゃって、それで電話線を引きちぎっちゃったって噂を聞いたの。でも別の人は行政が関係者専用に設定を変えたので一般市民は使用不能になってるとか言ってた。
Sounds to me like the result is the same for us either way, regardless of what actually happened. The phones are useless, so we can't reach the outside using them.
早い話が情報が錯綜してて誰もが混乱してるってことか。
Right after I said that, someone smacked me hard on the back. Is that you, Mion? It was Mion. Ha! Hello, my future wife in another timeline.
俺のセリフだぜ。お前も無事でよかった。
Mion made a big show of wiping her tears away, enjoying our reunion after only a scant few days. Probably feels more like a week given the current circumstances. There's no need to explain it at this point, I think, but the old customs here meant Hinamizawa was governed by 3 ancient clans known as the 3 families. Right now, Mion's family, the Sonozaki family, was the head of that organization. According to Mion, the Sonozaki family was already taking the initiative and leading the unified town council to try and settle the whole situation. They were also working together with the government and the SDF, so they've had information that regular villagers didn't know about. Okay, so...
ぶっちゃけた話どうなってんだ。そのウイルスってやつは 本当に村人全員に感染してんのか？
Yeah, spill the beans. Some info would be nice.
早朝にあった説明ではその可能性は極めて薄いってさ。話では感染者が出たのは高津戸の方らしいんだよ。あっちはほとんど人が住んでないからね。素早く隔離封鎖がされたからHinamizawa地区には及んでないんじゃないかって言われてる。
So the quarantine that we're under at the moment is just a precaution that they're taking.
Hinamizawa地区の全員が白であることが確認できたら段階的に隔離は解除になるんじゃないかって楽観論も出てるよ。
そうならいいよね。高津戸に住んでる人には悪いけどHinamizawa地区だけでも早く隔離が終わるといいね。
That was when Mion gave us a sharp look. Then she grabbed my head and Reina's, pulling us in close to her own. Then she whispered so quietly that only we could hear.
でも私はそう楽観的だとは思えないね。おじさん無線使えるんだけどさ、警察や自衛隊の回線にも入れるように改造してあるんだよ。
Of course it isn't that
そこで
simple.
傍受してる限りは
Why
そんな
would it
簡
ever be
単な
that
話じゃない
simple?
みたい。
And look at that! A nice little CG image that shows event that is actually happening in this arc that I can use for the thumbnail instead of the temporary one that I've been using. So, I'm sure you all know what that means by this point. Let me get paint.net open up. Let's see if I can get this all squared away real fast. Okay, here it is. See, I'm just going to update the thumbnail real fast so it's more reflective of events. And I think this one will work just fine for our purposes. And hello, this is a BGM I've not heard in a long time. Perfect mood setter, all things considered, especially given the subject matter of this arc. Perfectly ominous. Okay, where's here? Okay, where's H? Here we are. Okay, PNG. All right, now let's go over here and update the thumbnail. All right, there we go. Perfect. So,
何しろHinamizawaは山間部の海村で陸のこと。どういう経路で海外からこの村へウイルスが伝播したのか、経路がさっぱりなんだよ。
yeah, that's definitely the million-dollar question of this whole thing, is because according to the news broadcast that we were hearing earlier, this thing was apparently first seen in a village and all the way in Africa. So how did it get all the way from a remote village in Africa to yet another remote village all the way on the other side of the world here in Japan? Well, you know, another remote, not this village specifically, but this region. How did it get all the way over there to here?
現在行政が把握している発症者は海外渡航歴がないらしくてね。他に潜在保菌者がいるんじゃないかって疑われてて、村人全員の海外渡航歴を調査中らしいよ。
Interesting.
つまり誰かが海外で感染してこの村へ持ち込んだってわけか。
Well, not necessarily, because from what you just said, this place... Symptoms of this virus showed up in a region close to this area, but not in Hinamizawa itself. It's, what's that place called? Takatsudo? Yeah, so it was probably actually a person that was in Takatsudo. They probably traveled from somewhere overseas, and probably in Africa or some other region where this virus happened to be. and brought back with them. And through their contact and their incubation period, they brought the virus into this region and, well, started the outbreak here. But my point is, it's not necessarily the case that it's somebody from Hinamizawa specifically that brought the virus here.
何しろ潜伏期間に幅があるらしいからね。持ち込んだ本人が未だ潜伏期の可能性が否定できないらしいんだよ。それにその人物に海外渡航歴がある保証もない。村の外で保菌者に接触して持ち込んだ可能性もあるからね。
Case in point.
おじさんの睨んだところじゃ隔離地区はHinamizawaだけに収まらない。下手をすれば県内あるいは地方レベルにまでも及びかねないね。
I thought that's what's already been happening, though.
なんてこった。
That was what was already said to have been happening, right? Just a few minutes ago?
このウイルス、テレビで言ってる外国の殺人ウイルスってのとは別物らしいって噂もあるんだよ。
Oh, so it's a different strain then.
どういうことだよ。
私もよくはわからないんだけど、傍受できた無線の一部から今回のウイルス騒ぎをHinamizawa土着の風土病を疑うような内容が聞けたんだよ。
Okay, so if that's the case, then maybe it is Hinamizawa syndrome after all. But then that begs the question as to why exactly is this quarantine even happening at all? Because normally things don't play out this way, like they do in most other story arcs involving this stuff here. Normally, Rika gets killed by Takano, and from that point onward, the whole doomsday plan that's set in advance, should the queen carrier of Hinamizawa syndrome ever get killed, is then put into play, and the village gets slaughtered and then promptly sealed. But that works under an assumption that the villagers would go on a mass riot when the queen carrier dies. So hence the need to kill all the villagers in order to prevent an entire village from going around causing chaos within the entire region. But based on the quarantine measures that we're seeing here, it would indicate to me that whatever they're dealing with here is different from it has to be different from Hinamizawa syndrome as we understand it, because the exact methods in which they're going about this differ from how the plan usually goes into effect. They're not killing anybody, they're just quarantining us. So it has to be a different virus, right? But if so, then yeah, so I got a lot of questions as you can see. But the fact that this thing is reportedly endemic to this area is definitely interesting and makes me think it could be related to Hinamizawa syndrome. But given the circumstances I just laid out, it might be a wholly different disease altogether, or maybe a different strain.
この殺人ウイルスが昔からHinamizawaに眠ってたってのか。
私もよくはわかんないけど、ただHinamizawaの古い伝承には沼から不浄な何かが湧き出して村を襲ったという話が残ってる。それが再び湧き出したのではないかって疑えないこともないね。
Hanyu, did you come out of the swamp and pass out the common cold on to everybody?
でもみーちゃん、だとしたらまだ安心できるね。だってその大昔の時には村が滅んだわけじゃないんでしょ。ということはテレビで言ってる村を全滅させるようなウイルスよりはずっと毒性が弱いってことだよ。
That's again assuming we're talking about the same virus that the legends that Mion just referenced is talking about. Somehow I doubt that's the case.
鬼ヶ淵村の伝承では沼より湧き出した不浄に取りつかれると鬼と化したらしい。 結局人の手では何もできず、お社様の降臨まで人々に打つ手はなかった。
No, it can't be demonification, because that isn't endemic to Hinamizawa.
つまり伝説に残るような奇跡が起こるまで村はその災禍から逃れられなかったってことだな。
そうだね。奇跡が起こらなければ村は全滅してたってことだね。
Wait a minute. There was an outbreak in old Onikafuchi that we saw get covered in Karahogushi. The one that Hanyu in that story used Ryonok to cure. Could it be that virus? Maybe an evolved strain of that? But even so, that arc is basically that particular arc though has only broad strokes in regard. It has a broad strokes approach when it comes to its canacity to the rest of the series, because it has been established that that arc isn't exactly a completely faithful retelling of events from that timeline back when Hanyu was still alive, before she ended up getting killed and ended up becoming a god. So, who knows? I'm really trying to wrap my head around what this thing could be here, but I really don't feel like I'm getting any solid answers at the moment. It seemed there was a lot of older villagers who believed this whole virus commotion was Orishiro-sama's curse. I could see them here and there going through rosaries and offering prayers up as they begged for forgiveness.
お社様の生まれ変わりであるリカちゃんがそれを否定してくれれば騒ぎは落ち着くんだろうけどね。バッチャが今自衛隊の人にそれを説明してるところだよ。まあ、よそから来た連中にはリカちゃまのこの村における意味は理解できないだろうからね。
だな。迷信の話は抜きにしても、俺も早く無事なリカちゃんと貞子の姿を見て安心したいぜ。
That's right. Hinamizawa has a unique religion that worships a guardian deity known as Orishiro-sama. Central to that faith was the legend of Orishiro-sama's curse. So there were a lot of villagers conflating that curse with the current commotion. That was why everyone wanted to see Rika Furuti, who was considered to be Orishiro-sama's reincarnation, alive and healthy, and hear her proclaim that this commotion had nothing to do with Orishiro-sama. It was the first emergency situation of this matter that the village had faced. Is it, though? No one had yet to recover from the shock to their heart, and they wanted something to cling to. But even if the village was ruled by superstition, it was still a part of modern 20th century Japan. So of course they wanted to respond calmly without mulling about in confusion. So many had to decide for themselves that as long as they saw Rika Furuti safe and sound, then they would regain their composure. That also meant that if they couldn't see Rika Furuti, then they would remain lost in their superstitions. Couldn't we just get a cardboard cutout of Rika and then just plaster it around the village? Wouldn't that work as a good substitute? Okay, all joking aside, okay, July 16, Wednesday, day 10. We already gone to day 10 now. Damn. But yeah, all joking aside though, yeah, that's definitely another problem I didn't even take into account. Is the potential hysteria that could grow within the village's population if they don't have somebody like Rika to cling on to and reassure them. If everybody is constantly isolated from themselves, up to including Rika from the rest of the village, then, well, I could just picture Takano in the background, just using a case example of this. Well, you know, this event as a example or a piece of evidence to her Queen Carrier theory, if anything. Without school, I had completely lost my sense for what day it was. Now that I think about it, I wonder what Takano is doing right now. How's she faring with this, I wonder? So the television programming was all that barely maintained my sense of daily life. So for the first few days, the television only covered what they dubbed the Hinamizawa virus outbreak and the resulting quarantine. Once the 10th day had passed, the news only mentioned it when something special was happening. As far as the public was concerned, some minister or another hadn't cut his golf game short when the Hinamizawa crisis happened or something. So they quibbled over that, which led to queries into his secretary's salary or something. All completely pointless stuff. So long as it wasn't brought up in the news, society probably deluded themselves into believing the virus crisis was resolved. I couldn't help but realize how coldly society gorged itself on the misfortune of others. Ain't that the truth? By this point, most villagers had gotten over their hesitation to go outside, at least to collect supplies and such. Lately, Mion's been wondering if it's not just our village being quarantined, but Okinomiya as well. We didn't have to go into town to shop, and some had started joking that it was much easier with water and food all being delivered for free. I'd force a smile at that, but I couldn't shake the sense of entrapment brought on by the quarantine lasting 10 days already. 10 days would have been the dream for me when it came to the COVID lockdowns. I remember back when that first started, how all the governments around the world were telling us right from the start that we just only needed a few weeks to slow the curve or whatever it was exactly they said, and 3 weeks ended up turning into 4+ years. Yeah. So count yourself lucky. I don't think you have to worry about dealing with this thing for 4+ years, Keiichi. So, as bad as things are for you right now, I'm going to make the relatively safe prediction that you're going to get off relatively easy. The same went for Mion. She sounded lighthearted and carefree on the surface, but Mion couldn't shake the anxiety from her expression either. With the way things were, staying at home wasn't helping. If I was at least talking to someone, I could distract myself. I even started volunteering to help carry the plastic tanks of drinking water, excited at the chance to see my friends by the water supply. Of course, it wasn't like it was fun, though. When we saw each other, we only shared our anxieties. But even so, it was still far better than huddling under a blanket all by myself. Definitely get that sentiment. You mean besides the ones that I get on a regular basis from my daddy whipping me with his belt? No, I don't think so.
Mio! レナもか。よかった。相変わらず電話が通じないからな。こうして会えるとホッとするぜ。
だね。レナも最近は学校が再開してくれないかなって思うくらいだもん。は
I wonder if Chi Sensei's curry could somehow provide a natural immunity to this thing, whatever it is. You know, an abundance of spices and all that. If the school were to reopen, then we could all think back on our peaceful everyday lives and do our best to pretend everything was fine. But I guess not. If I recall, Chie Sensei lives in Okinomiya, so he can't reopen the school if she can't get there because of the quarantine.
せっかく未曾有の大災害で休校なんだからさ、たまにはこういうライフを満喫するのも悪くないけどね。
Are we really living free though? Because I mean, for the most part, we're all locked in our homes. Mion's personality was truly valuable in times like this. She could get the conversation going easily, and make it as light as our usual everyday chatter. But in the end, she brought the conversation back to our worries about our current situation.
そうだ、レナ、ケイちゃん、気を悪くしないで聞いて。ここだけの話だから。
When was this arc written, I wonder? I want to check. Higurashi When They Cry, Outbreak, Arc. Outbreak. Here we are, Outbreak. This was released in 2014, August 17th, 2014. So this was before the actual COVID lockdowns by 6 years. Okay. So it's definitely not a contemporary piece, what this thing is. Yeah, governments did say it wouldn't last that long, but that is not what the World Health Organization said. The World Health Organization kept criticizing governments for not considering how bad it actually would be. And I believed in the World Health Organization rather than the government about the lockdowns. Well, I'm somebody who believed in the opposite in regards to how lethal the virus actually was, almost right from the start. At least after the first few weeks, I actually ended up passing, and I, through a lot of digging at the time, was able to get some kind of idea as to the actual lethality and symptoms of the thing. It didn't seem like something to me at the time when this lockdowns first started that it was something that warranted the kind of massive response that governments around the world were issuing. And, well, looking back on things in retrospect, more and more evidence is starting to show that's definitely proving to have been the case. If anything, we've probably done a lot more harm with how we chose to respond to the thing than the virus itself ever could have done to us. I know that might be a bit of a hot take for some people to say here. I'm just being honest about my take on the thing. But in either way, regardless, what ended up happening is, well, we all had to essentially deal with this thing for 4 years. So regardless of one's opinion on the actual lethality of the virus, we all ended up suffering quite a bit under the lockdowns, regardless. And even for quite a while afterwards, I would argue, and if you're a young kid, because there's now studies being done here showing that a lot of young kids' cognitive development was severely affected due to missing out on several years of proper schooling. If nothing else, I think we can all agree that the lockdowns themselves were very damaging to pretty much everybody involved, regardless of one's opinion on the virus itself. I think we can all agree on that, if nothing else, for sure. I don't remember if I ever mentioned this story at any point in the past here, but I did apparently have COVID myself at one point during the early portion of the lockdowns. Apparently, I tested positive for it one day, and I had to report it to my workplace at the time. But I never actually developed symptoms. I was completely asymptomatic. I knew back then at that point that there was a number of people here who were asymptomatic, like they never showed any actual symptoms of the virus, even if it was reportedly in their system. But I was working retail at the time. I was working retail at the time of the lockdowns and everything, so I had plenty of people. I had plenty of exposure to a wide variety of people within a retail setting here, of various age groups, different backgrounds. And not once did I ever actually get sick. And yeah, I know in my case here, my case is not universal for everybody here, but I'm just talking about for myself here that most of the harm that actually came for me when it came to the virus was due to me having to essentially essentially be quarantined from my day job at the time. So I couldn't go back to work for almost 2 months straight and all that. So that definitely made things a bit hard for me, to put it mildly, because, you know, I couldn't work. So I'm a case of somebody who I would argue got hurt more by the measures of the lockdown itself rather than the virus itself. But fortunately, after I was allowed to go back to work after having been forced to wait for a couple months in order to assuage their fears, I never had to deal with anything like that ever since. And then eventually, 3 to 4 years later, the lockdowns ended, and here we are. But even so, that whole time period had left a lot of psychological scars on me, because a lot of bad events in my life ended up happening around that time period too, of a more personal nature. So it's just that entire period is just a period of my life that I definitely am not fond of remembering, because it's just filled with a lot of unhappy memories of me. Not just of the lockdowns themselves, but other things that happened around the same time. But yeah, this arc is kind of remind me a little bit of those days, at least when it came to the initial first few weeks. I mean, it's not like it's triggering like a post-traumatic response or anything crazy like that in me here, but I mean, I am getting a bit of a sense of deja vu with this, I will admit. But like I was saying before, something tells me that our fine cast here is not going to have to wait 4+ years here in order to get out of this lockdown that they're currently under. Okay, so what do you got for us, Mion? Mion drew us both behind cover and lowered her voice to a whisper.
何？どうしたの、みーちゃん？
また何か情報でも分かったのか?
The SDF gave us a good enough explanation when the quarantine first started, but lately they haven't made any more announcements about the ongoing situation. Okay, that's concerning. Lack of communication during a quarantine is definitely not a good sign. That meant we were left with nothing but rumors and word of mouth. But since we were further isolated based on how we were divided under the council, the villagers had limited interaction with each other. But even those rumors weren't able to get around well enough. Fortunately enough, our village had a decent amount of amateur radio fans, so they were using their radios to contact each other. Mion was one of the people using her radio to check how other quarantined areas were doing, trying to get a grasp of the full state of Hinamizawa.
何しろ未だ電話が回復しないからな。こういう時本当に無線は貴重だぜ。それ
というかリカちゃんが収容されて容体不明ってのは本当らしい。
She's been taken into custody? She took a brief pause after that. The Sonozaki family had been strongly requesting that Rika Furuti go around the village, so they could wipe away any fears of Orishiro-sama's curse. But those demands kept getting ignored. Probably because she's been under quarantine. Or under custody, rather. Yeah. Never mind, I thought I heard something. The SCF didn't want a carrier traversing the village and spreading infections, so they kept each council area strictly isolated, and so none of the villagers could find out how Rika Furuti was doing, which only stirred their anxieties up even more. If anything were to happen to her, the reincarnation of Orishiro-sama, then that could only mean one thing. The end of the village, as passed down in legend. That fear had finally reached its logical conclusion. Hey now, we don't know for sure she's actually dead. If they couldn't get information on Rika Furuti, then something had happened to her, and the SDF was trying to cover it up. That fear had made its way into rumor. Everyone denied those rumors, of course, but the only way to get rid of them was for the villagers to see Rika Furuti safe and sound. That wasn't happening, though. So the villagers' collective anxiety was only growing stronger.
リカちゃんが容体不明ってどういうことなの？リカちゃんがウイルスにやられちゃったってことなの？声が大きいよ。ウイルスかどうかは知らないけど、とにかく貿易部隊に収容されて、その後戻ってこないらしいの。安否は不明。連れてかれたのは何人かが目撃していて間違いないって。
Wait a minute. This could be people that are affiliated with the Mountain Dogs, because if this is a foreign virus, then the Mountain Dogs will probably want to try to secure Rika and keep her isolated from said virus and try to keep her healthy. So it is possible that maybe maybe it's them and they've got her locked down somewhere.
それはいつの話だ？
隔離の当日だって。
The day of the quarantine.
さとこちゃんはリカちゃんと一緒に住んでるんだから、その。
Well, considering Sadako has a particularly strong strain of Hinamizawa syndrome in her body, and is thus also a valuable research specimen for the Irie clinic, I wouldn't rule it out that she might have been quarantined by the Mountain Dogs too, assuming that they were actually involved. I know I am making a lot of assumptions here, but I'm just trying to think what could have possibly happened based on what we know of the setting that we're working with here. And we got to remember that we have the entire Irie clinic and the Mountain Dogs and all affiliated organizations in this village that were already here to begin with before this outbreak occurred. And if it's a foreign virus that entered the village, then again, to me, it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that the Irie clinic would try to protect their assets in Hinamizawa syndrome research in the form of Rika and Sadako. If Rika-chan fell victim to the virus, then as her housemate, Sadako would have.
そこまで詳しくは。
だろうな。村の年寄り連中はリカちゃんのことに関心はあっても、サトコのことは全く無関心だからな。
サトコちゃんも収容されたのかな。
That's a theory I'm going with for now.
サトコは収容されたわけじゃないみたい。感染者が出たら同居人だって疑うのが貿易の基本だと思うんだけどね。無線で聞く限りは収容されたのはリカちゃんだけで、サトコはそういうわけじゃないみたい。それでね、なんだか妙な話になってるんだよ。
Okay, so if Sadako wasn't actually taken in, then well, that still wouldn't necessarily rule out Rika being taken in by virtue of being the queen carrier either. So I wouldn't rule my theory out just yet. Remember what they've said in Chapter 6? Parasites suppress an immune system. Yeah, you're right. You're right, actually. And Hinamizawa syndrome is parasitic, so yeah, you're right.
妙な話？
ほら、聡子の両親がダムの誘致派だったのは知ってるでしょ。それでお社様の罰が当たって事故死しちゃって。
聡子ちゃんの北条家がお社様にたたられている、呪われているというような話。
Ow, ow, ow.
罰当たり者の聡子がお社様の生まれ変わりである神聖なリカ様と同居すると汚れが移るかもしれないみたいなひどいことを言ってる連中が前からいたんだけど、そういう連中が今回のお社様のたたりを聡子のせいだと言い出してるみたいなんだ。
They talk about how Rika is such a holy figure, yet all I can picture in my mind is the image of Rika downing bottle after bottle of Bernkastel wine, having nihilistic musings about her life all the while. Definitely the image of holy purity.
なんだって？バカな話しやがって。連中は箸が転んでも聡子のせいだな。
もちろん冗談だと信じたいけど、聡子をすまきにして鬼ヶ淵に沈めればお社様のお怒りが収まるんじゃないかって話が向こうの町会でまことしやかに流れてるらしいよ。
Oh, great. Oh, great. Splendid.
そんな。ねえ、私たちってそんなにも未開人なの？文明人じゃないの？私たちが日常を失ってからやっと1週間が経った程度なのに、もうそんな迷信がはびこってるの？
Only over Keiichi's dead body they will. Somebody give me a spiked bat. Excuse me, not back. Although, then again, if there are any hedgehogs nearby, that could work. Either way, give me something spiky. I'll use that to defend Sadako. I mean, in Japan, alcohol, sake, brings you closer with spirits. Huh, I didn't know that. Well, then I guess maybe she's a bit more pure than I gave her credit for at first. Even with her alcoholism. Just goes to show what I know. Reina's indignation was justified. But thinking back on it, Hinamizawa was possessed by such strange beliefs long before this whole virus commotion. Hinamizawa had never shown any proof it was a civilized land. The people there simply acted that way. But once you tore away the facade, they quickly revealed themselves as adherents to some truly bizarre delusions. You could arguably make this argument for a lot of people all around the world that the only reason people mostly act civil with each other is because the lights are working and you can call 911. But you take those things away, you take away all the services, all manner of functional society away from them, isolate and make them feel isolated, alone, and scare the shit out of them. You could see a lot of people lose their civility in a do or die emergency situation like that, and watch them turn into savages over time like that. Because fear is the mind killer. And fear is a universal emotion to the human condition, so it applies to everywhere, to almost everyone. Now, I'm somebody who normally, at least before the COVID lockdowns anyway, had believed here that most people wouldn't allow themselves to devolve to barbarity like that, but, well, To humanity's credit, I didn't recall hearing any tales of human sacrifice being made in order to make COVID go away. So we didn't get to quite that level. So I guess thinking about it now, I guess there is some hope for humanity, just based on something like that. Whatever. I'm going on tangent again.
ミオンの表情を見る限り、どうも冗談で済まそうって話にはなってないらしいな。
Mion's silence and downcast stare affirmed it as true.
もちろん私も無線で冷静になるように言ってるよ。でもなかなか収まってくれない。
It's a myth that if sake tastes bad, then evil, harmful spirits are near. Trying to remember any instance where we've seen Rika drinking wine, and any instances of it tasting bad, which then follows up with something bad happening shortly after. I'm trying to remember if there was any scenes like that ever happened, and I'm not thinking of anything. I'm drawing blanks. But honestly, it's probably really not important anyway.
くそ、リカちゃんが収容されたということは、サトコは今一人であの倉庫小屋に暮らしてるわけか。万が一を考えると危なくないか。
そうだね。サトコちゃん一人じゃできることに限界もあると思う。私たちのところにかくまう方がいいんじゃないかな。
I second that notion. Let's go on an espionage mission and weasel her out over into our section. No, we haven't seen that. Okay, so yeah, that explains why I can't remember anything, because we never actually seen anything like that happen. Okay. Reina's suggestion was a good one. If we left Sako alone like this, then those caught up in those wild fantasies might go after her. But whose home would we shelter her in? Well, Keishi has a large house, so there's that. And Reina, when she's pissed, she's a force to be reckoned with, so she would make for a good guardian. Even if her house isn't exactly ideal in terms of space, especially all the stuff she hoards. And, well, Mion's a no-go because, well, I'm going by what this conversation, clearly Sako's reputation among the rest of the village is not in good spirits. And that would naturally extend to the Sonozaki family that are the ones, since they would normally be the ones that would be perpetuating that the most. For PR reasons. So, yeah, Mion would be a no-go, for sure. So, if space is important, we have Keiichi, but if having a reliable protector is important, which I would argue is more important, I would suggest Reina. According to Mion, the rumors that Sadako was already infected with the virus are being spread as though they're true. Word of mouth, that primitive means of communication, was all Hinamizawa had. It was easy for rumors to work their way into such communication. And because of mass psychology, people convince themselves those statements are true, embellishing them even farther until they become established fact. At that point, the truth won't matter. Sako will effectively become one of the infected. Once that happens, whichever home takes her in will face the same treatment. It went without saying, but Mion's home, the Sonozaki family, were already on bad terms with Sadako and the Hojo family. It would be extremely difficult for Mion's family to shelter Sadako. Unless, now that I think about it, you do it in secret. There is the underground bomb shelter in the Sonozaki estate. If you could smuggle her in there without the rest of the family being aware of it, then that right there, as long as she could still get access to clean food and water, I would argue, will offer her the best protection, because it's on the Sonozaki estate. And it would be underground, too, to boot. What about my family? My mother would probably understand, but considering the fact my father is still obstinately refusing to expose himself to the outdoors, I couldn't imagine him taking Sadako in. Oh, Daddy. Why you gotta be like this now of all times?
どうせ無理だろうってのは分かってるよ。だから、もしさとこちゃんをかくまおうってことになったら、レナのうちでかくまうよ。
Okay.
お父さんには文句なんか言わせないから。
Yes, please. I do honestly think that if we couldn't find a way to smuggle her into the underground shelter in the Sonozaki estate, then you would be the best person for her to be with. I had no idea why, but Reina held control of her family's finances. So if she got serious, she could make her father give in. It made me sad that I couldn't stick my chest out and say my family could too. And I hated that she just assumed it wasn't possible. But I couldn't do anything about that. It's not like that pride would matter in this situation.
わかった。サトコと接触できたら、レナの家へ行くよう伝えよう。いや、むしろなんとかサトコと接触をして、こちらへ呼びたいくらいだな。ミオンの話を聞く。
あっちは信心深くて過激な神社部の幹部が多いからね。でね、実はサトコだけの問題じゃないんだよ。場合によってはケイちゃんやレナも危ないかもしれないんだよ。
Why? Why would we be in trouble, specifically? Mion's eyes grew even sharper, looking back and forth between me and Reina. Even though she was worried about Sadako, the chill in her gaze was enough to shred the naive thought that at least we would be safe.
先日も話したよね。例のウイルスがHinamizawa土着のものかもしれないって噂。その話がね、だいぶ信憑性を帯びてきててね。古来から村人全員が感染してたんじゃないかって言うんだよ。
だからそれじゃおかしいだろ。だったら昔から連日死者が出てなきゃならないぞ。
それでそうだと言ってる連中の言い分が面白いんだよ。そのウイルスはこの村の中にいる限りは安定していて無害だって言うんだよ。
Oh, I see where they're going with this. Because Keiichi is an immigrant to the village, and Reina, for a time, had left the village with her family before coming back. Yeah. Okay, I see where they're going with this.
さらに言うと、この村にずっと長く住み続けている一族には生まれつきの免疫みたいなものがあって大丈夫だって話らしいんだよ。
さっぱりわからねえぞ。つまりなんだ、まさか例えばよそから引っ越してきた俺やレナはその免疫がないからとか言い出すんじゃないだろうな。
That seems to be the gist of what they're saying, yeah?
まさにそれだよ。近年Hinamizawaに引っ越してきた人間のせいでそのウイルスの調和が崩れて、その村人全員のウイルスがおかしくなって、
Well, I'm not gonna pretend to be a biologist or virologist myself here. I am not an expert in that field in any capacity. So this is just me indulging an amateur hour on the subject. So bear that in mind as I talk, but I don't think that's how this sort of thing works. I don't think... Normally, based on my own understanding how this sort of thing normally plays out, if you're dealing with a population that has herd immunity against a specific virus, and an outsider is to show up in the herd that doesn't necessarily have that immunity, what will end up happening is that the people or creatures or whatever that move into the herd, in this case Hinamizawa village, would end up developing symptoms of an actual infection from whatever the herd is immune to. In this case, this virus, and they would through them, they would have to. Yeah, through them, it would be possible for them to possibly get something transmitted, for them to transmit something to the rest of the herd. But from day one, when the lockdown was initiated, actually no, that's not the right one. No, I'm just thinking, because Keiichi doesn't really interact with a whole lot of people from the village, but then again, okay, maybe I thought I had something here, but the more I think about it, I wonder. Yeah, because the incubation period is one thing that you gotta factor into account, because it could go up to about 50 days at the most, and all it takes is just one person exposing themselves to another person, and then person B going to person C, and C goes to persons persons D, E, and F, and so on and so forth. So, But wait, no, it wouldn't work here, because both Keiichi and Reina moved back into the village long before the incubation period for this thing should have gone into effect, right? Because normally around the time the events of each story arc takes place, like from chapter 1 in the main story onward, Keiichi had already been in the village for at least a couple months. And Reina even longer than that. So there's no way they could have brought this virus in themselves, because the incubation period would have long since passed before these events could have taken place. So it can't be them. The incubation period and the time in which they arrived in the villagers basically gives them an alibi.
まさか兄ちゃんまでそのとんでもない話を信じてるわけないよね。
もちろんだよ。こんなわけのわかんない話が通用するわけない。でもなぜかみんな信じてるんだよ。私もわけがわかんない。普段だったら絶対こんなバカな話は誰も信じないのに、なぜかここ数日妙な話やデマが当たり前のように通用して飛び交ってる。私は初日からずっと無線を聞いてるんだけど、最近の村人はどんどんおかしくなってるんだよ。異常な生活で心の緊張がとかトラウマがとか、そんな甘っちょろいレベルじゃない。明らかに嘘だろうデマだろうと思うことが当たり前のように横行し、それを誰も覆せない。誰かがそれを否定すると感染者扱いをされそうになる。
Yep, the panic is definitely starting to settle in.
すっごく気持ち悪いことになってるんだよ。何かが変。だから用心して。
Rin and I were both left speechless by Mion's desperation. It was clearly a good thing that we weren't able to listen to what she picked up over the radio. Thrust into these abnormal circumstances, their frustration had reached its peak, and that, along with anxieties and fears founded on faith, were producing new rumors one after another, and it was steadily approaching the point where someone would have to be sacrificed in order to clear those rumors away. Judging from Mion's expression, we were already approaching that critical moment. That was the moment I first realized it. Realized what? That there was a clear hostility in the looks the villagers gave us as we talked to each other. Hell are you looking at? What, you want to see a full moon in broad daylight? Here, let me undo my belt. Apparently it wasn't just my imagination either. Reina was quick to pick up on that too.
圭一君、用心しよ
う。そうだな。くだらないデマのせいで疑われるのは気に入らねえが、理科に冠ってこともあるしな。
うん。レナもケイちゃんも無用の外出は避けた方がいいと思う。あとくれぐれも一人で外出しないように。家のシャッターは閉め切ってね。
Well, looks to me, given the growing panic and distrust of the village population, looks to me like I'm gonna have to seal up my house with more than just duct tape now. I need to start looking for some plank boards and nails.
心ないことを言ってくる人があっても、どんなに悔しくても買い言葉を返さないこと。いいね。
Well, that's the nice thing. I don't have to say anything at all in order to provoke people. Like I said, I can just show them a full moon in broad daylight and call it a day. The hostile looks I felt from time to time were too much to pretend I just imagined them. The accursed customs of a village that had avoided contact with outsiders for centuries weren't about to be brushed away by a scant few years of civilization. Rin and I could only nod in acknowledgement of Mion's warning, the tense looks clear on our faces. Showa 58 HQ, General Affairs Division, Section 1E34. July 7th, 1983. Director of Disaster Relief, Hinamizawa Region. Evacuation orders. Emergency. The Director of Disaster Relief is to evacuate the disaster relief units immediately. Okay, why is disaster relief pulling out? During evacuation, units are to follow the directions of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. Notes. 1. Orders. The disaster relief units will follow the directions of the National Institute of Infectious Diseases and evacuate to the designated zone outside the quarantine. 2. Reason. Yes, please tell me the reason why. Although I have a feeling I'm not going to like it. The routine blood test detected a positive reaction for the type N173 virus in 4 squad members. That's what this thing's called? Type, well, no, it's not M. It's some kind of Greek, it's some kind of Greek alphabet letter, whatever that is. I'm going to tell you what it is, though. What it's called, I mean. This proves that the disaster relief unit's current equipment is ineffective at preventing infection. Showa 58 HQ, General Affairs Division, Section 1E35. July 7th, 1983. Commander of the 738th Equipment Test Company. Dispatch orders. Emergency. The 738th Equipment Test Company is to deploy immediately with version 13 disease prevention equipment under the command of the Director of Disaster Relief, Hinamizawa Region. Notes. 1. Orders. As of today, the 738th Equipment Test Company will be placed under the command of the Disaster of Relief, Hinamizawa Region. The test company shall follow the Director's orders and deploy on site immediately. 2. Mission. Peacekeeping in the quarantine zone. 3. Remarks. Discharge of firearms will be authorized under the enclosed conditions. Oh, great. Well, you gotta tell me what those conditions are? No need to keep me in suspense here. July 6, 1983. Alphabet Project Board of Directors. Alphabet! It's Alphabet. Director of Disaster Relief, Hinamizawa region. Regarding the N173 virus. I'm just gonna call it N until I actually know the name of that actual Roman alphabet letter. This virus has been classified as a category C neuroparasitic virus, so it's parasitic. What follows is an explanation of its properties. Of all the viruses that infect the human nervous system, this one demonstrates extremely strong compatibility with mankind. Also, due to the difficulty in identifying symptoms in the infected, its existence was not confirmed until the modern age. According to an unofficial investigation conducted by the UN in 1948, over 99% of the human species contain this parasitic virus within their brain. 99%?! So this is a global thing, whatever this thing is. Furthermore, it has been pointed out that it is likely this virus has been with humanity from the beginning. As all that suggests, this virus is extremely well integrated into the human body, and the host is unaware of the parasite. This makes the virus very similar to other microbes within the human body, such as Escherichia coli, which is commonly known of today. However, the problem with this virus is that we have identified the possibility of this virus interfering with the host's brain functions. This virus makes its host amiable to other hosts of the same strain, and it directs its hosts to be antagonistic towards hosts of different strains. Interesting detail. The UN investigation has discovered several hundred strains that would be classified under this virus, and another shocking fact was uncovered as well. The distribution map of these strains, oddly enough, matches up with present-day national borders and religious distributions. Say what? Furthermore, it is suspected that each strain of this virus is deeply involved in shaping the foundations of its host's behavior and personality. So, in other words, these parasites are essentially the pilots that are piloting the human brain, and are thus making the essential building blocks that builds the person up. That's essentially what you're saying. That 99% of humans aren't actually in control of themselves, aren't actually fully in control of themselves, and who they are as people, and how they develop as people is controlled by some external, or rather in this case, internal parasite. So the theory stands that the unique traits of this parasitic virus are responsible for several tendencies generally attributed to race or nationality. In other words, this virus is theorized to be indirectly responsible for all patterns within societies, personalities, and cultures of different ethnicities and nations. In other words, humans don't possess actual free will. They're all shaped and operating under the control of these parasites. That's definitely quite the black pill to swallow, if I must be honest. Yeah, didn't Hifumi Takano suspect religion was caused by parasites? Yeah, you're right. He did suspect that, didn't he? It was just Hinamizawa that was the easiest to study. Yeah, well, how about that? Looks like Hifumi ended up being. It looks like this story is vindicating Hifumi here. Big time. first to uncover the existence of this virus was a German doctor within the Nazi administration, and it is theorized that this discovery led to the administration's massacre of particular peoples. The UN Secret Investigation Committee has identified the possibility that this virus has indirectly led to commit its most heinous atrocities, and they called for the extermination of this virus. That call being held back by fear that such an objective could trigger ethnic cleansing. Well, here's the thing. If the people within within the UN and all these organizations that would have the authority to issue these orders are all being influenced by these parasites too, then they would effectively be ordering for their own genocide, these parasites. And I don't think that these things would actually do that. If these things are actually capable of controlling human thought and human behavior to this extent, because this signifies to me that these parasites are intelligent to at least to some degree. I don't think that they would actually. I don't think that they would actually end up. They would actually end up allowing their human hosts to organize to such an extent a series of actions which could lead to their own extermination, as on a global scale. I don't think that would happen. As a result, all research on the virus was perpetually prohibited in 1955, and they elected to discard the records of that research. This meant humanity would perpetually embrace this parasite and prohibit the further discovery of its existence as well. Yeah, it would have to be that way just so this thing could preserve itself. However, several countries continue to research the virus on their own in secret. Since there has been no exchange of information between these, the state of the research in our nation is unknown. But here's the problem. If these researchers are being influenced by these same parasites, then wouldn't that, by its very premise, make the research that they're doing tainted? Because they're being influenced by the very same entities that is seeking to study and eventually eliminate them? How would you know that the parasites aren't influencing the researchers in such a way to come to incorrect conclusions that would actually lead to their safe extermination from the human population? It's possible that they would just lie. Well, rather make the researchers lie or come to false conclusions. Right? But then again, based on what's being said here, it's not. I don't. Now that I think about it, it's not like they're saying like these things are capable of full-blown mind control. It affects humans' behaviors on a more subconscious level, if anything, based on what's being said here. But even so, I think the subconscious level would still be sufficient enough to interfere with this research, and thus make it untrustworthy. Here in Japan, a research team was founded in secret by a group of medical schools in the late 1960s. Their research is the foundation for these current studies. America has caught wind that this virus is the cause of the most recent incident, and they will be planning to steal our research. We must not respond to their attempts to claim that research, disguised as offers of aid. So that's what the previously mentioned aid is all about then, from the US? Furthermore, amongst the strains of this virus, strain N173 is a rare variety, which displays extremely dramatic symptoms, such as I have already explained, traditionally this virus is extremely compatible with the human body and is totally unnoticeable. Then how'd you notice it? Yet the N173 strain causes dramatic alterations to personality within several days of infection. The most significant change is the promotion of anxiety and aggression. The villagers. Them becoming quickly aggressive and suspicious of us like they are. That's what you're getting at, isn't it? Yet it retains the unique aspects of this virus, guiding those changes in psychology to occur naturally. The infected residents of the Hinamizawa region already tend to strongly exhibit those tendencies. They have demonstrated the potential to cause certain catastrophes, mass riot, mass murder, within short periods of time. Direction of this matter should immediately be given over to the Alphabet Project, and as such, it should be carefully investigated as one of our nation's assets. I am confident our research into this matter will contribute to our national interest. Furthermore, the suppression of riots caused by this matter can only be conducted by the Alphabet Board of Directors, which possesses extrajudicial authority. I hope that you will consider these factors before making your decision tomorrow. National Institute of Infectious Diseases. Head of Room 13, Iwashi. July 7th, Thursday, day 11. Yeah, the whole premise behind this virus is really freaking wild. Too wild, I would say, to be honest with you. Like I said, based on what was said in the report, that would mean that it's very possible that the very research that's being done in secret on this thing is potentially being influenced in some way by different strains of this virus. Especially considering that this is something that, according to said report, infects 99% of the human population. So, that stands to reason, then, that the vast majority, if not the entirety of these research teams, are infected with this virus and are being subconsciously, and having their behaviors and inclinations being subconsciously affected by them already. And if this parasites, and if all these different strains of parasites' goals, just like with any living organism, is self-preservation, then it doesn't make sense to me that these viruses, these parasites, would willingly and knowingly, if they have any serious degree of actual intelligence to them, contributes to research which would result in their entire extermination on a global scale. It'd be akin to mass suicide for them. So the whole premise behind this whole thing just does not seem feasible to me based on this reasoning. This is just too much. This just seems a little too crazy. It just doesn't really make sense to me. And I see telemarketing is calling me right now. I will give you the finger and just keep doing what I'm doing here. Maybe the parasites are trying to contact me via telemarketing. They see me as a threat! But yeah, again, joking aside, not that I was really joking and seriously joking before the telemarketer remark, but yeah, again, this thing just seems like, on the very premise of it, when you stop to think about it, it just doesn't make sense. This thing, at least to me, based on how I reason it out, it just can't work. Because if these things have any actual intelligence to them, and are able to influence human behavior to this extent, all the way up to including influencing the development of cultures, religions, ideals, societal norms, that sort of thing, I don't think that they would do anything to enable their own global destruction. Hanyu wasn't the only high rune. If the Hinamizawa strain is connected to her, then maybe another strain? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe that's possible. I don't know. But that would require us to assume that that would require us to assume that a huge chunk of the events that we'd seen in Kotohiguchi is actually canonical to the rest of the story. But as we've already previously established before, only a handful of general events from the Kotohiguchi are actually canonical, while the rest is just essentially a muddled retelling or reimagining of said events, which have been established in legends and canon with Hinamizawa and Onikafuchi in the main story in previous arcs. So the only way that could really... So if the high runes are indeed a factor here in what's occurring in this arc, then that would mean then that all the stuff relating to the high runes and ryuns and all those different things, that would have to be canonical too, wouldn't it? I'll give this thing one thing. This arc has given me quite the serious puzzle to figure out. Maybe it'll give us answers before this whole thing is over. Who knows? I'm hoping it does. And hopefully they make sense, whatever those answers are. Because I'm telling you one thing, I am really confused right now. But I'll give it credit for one thing. It's definitely grabbed my attention. Definitely working my gray matter to try to figure this thing out as best I can. As the disturbing atmosphere towards outsiders like the Maibara family grew stronger, there was another change that fanned the anxiety of the villagers. The SDF has been supporting the villagers' unstable lifestyles, as well as providing mental support, but they had suddenly disappeared from the village. The elders, who hated standing around in long lines before the water supply trucks, had already lined up as early. But no matter how long they waited, the trucks weren't showing up. At first, we made the generous assumption that something had delayed them. Oh boy. So if no more supplies are actually coming, then it's everybody for themselves as far as resources go. That is definitely going to, for sure, put a lot of strain on everybody's mental faculties, for sure, when everybody realizes that no more food and water is coming, and so they're going to, by any means necessary, take what's left in order to ensure their own survival. So, Keiichi, you might want to start looking at the rest of your neighbors as potential enemies that'll come to break into your home and try to steal your food and water at some point. At first we made general... Okay, I just read this. But the fact that the SDF's deliveries had always been punctual before only worked against them, fanning anxieties even higher. Once it was long past the scheduled delivery time, the morning lines grew steadily longer. And the anger they felt at the water trucks for not arriving grew into anxiety, and finally into fear. The situation rapidly grew worse, and finally people began whispering that the SDF had abandoned us. Anyone would be shocked after hearing that rumor. The actions of the SDF were the final dam maintaining the village's sanity. With that dam suddenly removed, it was easy to feel as though the entire village had been cast out of Japan. However, there were a few villagers who weren't frightened by the SDF's disappearance. They had taken an optimistic view and assumed the quarantine would be lifted. These people even tried to leave the village. Yet something strange occurred at the barricades sealing us off. Yeah, boy, now that's a tank. Instead of the personnel clad in white raincoats that had been manning the barricades before, there were soldiers blocking the path, wearing much tougher-looking camouflaged gear that was more like a spacesuit. They even had an armored car parked up behind them, too. Okay, it's not a full-blown tank, it's an armored car. Now, why did the villagers insist on calling them soldiers? Because the guns they carried looked that dangerous. At the very least, none of the SDF members performing relief efforts had carried guns. Not only were the soldiers carrying their own guns, but the armored car also had a heavy machine gun stationed at its top hatch, and they aimed its muzzle at the villagers without hesitation. After aiming, they issued a warning, too.
こちらは陸上自衛隊です。隔離地域内からの離脱は認められていません。速やかに自宅に戻ってください。
Seeing and hearing that made them certain. Circumstances had changed. The commotion about this dangerous virus had progressed to the point where it was beyond the SDF's control. So they abandoned providing aid to the village and were trying to seal it away. That gave way to anger at the nation, who abandoned their relief efforts, and even greater fear at the idea that things had progressed that poorly. The villagers tried demanding an explanation of affairs from the soldiers. Oh dear. But they fired live ammo without remorse, intending to intimidate, and announced they would target their legs next if they did not leave immediately. The villagers then scattered like spiders and fled back to the village. They roached out! Afterward, their story grew exaggerated, and people started saying that some of them were actually shot and wounded, or even dead, causing even further turmoil. Actually, there's still a chance the part about the warning fire was all made up too, but there's no way to verify that anymore. And no need to, because that story wasn't being proven false. So it had already become truth. Is it my imagination, or is that red circle getting bigger? On top of that, some kind of jamming wave was emitted from somewhere, suddenly making the radio useless, leaving the word of mouth as the only means of communication, which increased the turmoil even further. That day, the first gunshot rang out in the village. We couldn't know for sure if the soldiers trapping us had fired on a villager, like the rumor suggested, or if some villager had fired their hunting rifle. But as that gunshot roared through the village, the whole population fell away from the law and order of civilized Japan. Oh, this is not good. The town council used their network to reach out and explain there was a mistake in the organization of relief efforts on the SDF side, and that due to the mistake, it would be some time before the relief efforts resumed. They also asked the villagers to help one another until that time. Had that message been sent out before such great anxiety spread throughout the village, then they might have been able to improve things a little. But it was all too late. Even though the SDF had ceased supplying food and water, every house had at least some stored up. However, no one knew how long this delay of provisions would last. The noxious, Heated air permeating the village was steadily robbing people of their sanity. Fearing that some insurgent might descend upon them in search of food, the shopping district had banded together and armed all the shops, forming their own neighborhood watch. Barricades taken from the dam site were lined up at the entrance to the shopping district. We are closed indefinitely. If you have no business here, you may not set foot within. If you still insist on entering, please discuss it with us on a case-by-case basis. Read the sign they had posted up, where the residents of the shopping district took their turns standing watch with hunting rifles. There was also another small flyer beside it. Those living in Takatsudo, please go away. That one was based on the rumors of the infected in Takatsudo. However, as the rumors continued to grow, there would likely be more signs posted next to it, prohibiting other regions as well. For a moment, we thought we might be able to have more interaction now that the SDF was no longer quarantining us separately. But the youth groups in each town council quickly took up that mantle of isolation. Everyone believed that their area had yet to become infected, and they could remain safe if they kept out people from other areas. Hinamizawa was fundamentally a farming village, but there were several people who had made their living through hunting since long ago, so the number of hunting rifles wasn't exactly small. Because of that, those who owned one volunteered to serve as guards. The number who volunteered directly translated into that town council's power. Either that, or it became their power to blur the line between fantasy and reality in order to realize their delusions of persecution. This is an actual nightmare scenario for me personally, to be stuck in the middle of something like this. And to think that a few years ago, especially depending on where you're living in the world, a lot of people very well could have experienced something close to this. That day, it was July 7th, the day of Tanabata. When we turned the television on, it displayed images of cute young children writing their wishes on boards and stretching out to hang them up on bamboo stalks. Yet here in Hinamizawa, our Tanabata involved posted signs rejecting the infected up upon violent-looking barricades, while many took up hunting rifles and glared at each other suspiciously. It was hard to believe this was still the same Japan. Late at night, my mother visited me. She was clutching an envelope in her hand.
ケイチ、今ね、ケイチ宛ての手紙が来たのよ。
From one of my friends, I assume?
手紙？俺宛て？
I snatched it up at once. It read to Kei-chan from Mion. Oh boy. What was this about? And during such a dark time? According to my mother, the doorbell rang, and by the time she reached our front door, it was shoved through the gap. She could have just come in if she went out of her way to visit. So the fact that she avoided doing so and left only a letter had me feeling a tinge anxious. You and me both. Though considering the abnormal state of the village lately, it made sense that Mion would be careful about trying to make contact. All the talk of this being an indigenous virus or being Orishiro-sama's wrath would ultimately end with those people suspecting the outsiders who moved into town recently. The whole Maibara family was made painfully aware of that lately. I still think the incubation period for this virus and the times in which the Maibara family and Reina moved back into town don't match up. But I guess clearly people are long since past thinking rationally at this point. Even before opening this letter, I could understand that things had reached the point where Mion, as the Sonozaki, couldn't visit us in broad daylight anymore. And yet the contents of this letter quickly informed me that was still a naive point of view.
ケイちゃんへ気をつけて。うちの町会内で前原家と竜宮家をやり玉にあげようという意見が強くなってる。もう本当に馬鹿げてることだけれども、彼らは誰かを生贄にあげないと恐怖感に押しつぶされてしまうところまで追い詰められてる。
Oh, fuck me. Keiichi, please tell me you got a spiked bat handy.
そんなことしたって何の解決にもならないって反論できたのは最初のうちだけ。数日前からそうであるように、少しでも反論すると感染者をかばうのはお前も感染者だからだろうなんておかしな論法になっちゃって、誰もストップがかけられない。ウイルス派とお社様のたたり派が互角だったうちは双方が支離滅裂な論争をするだけだったからよかったんだけど、最近お社様のたたり派がのしてきてね、全体をリードするようになりつつある。バッチャが元気だったならこんな暴走は許さないんだけど、実は数日前に高熱を出しちゃって起き上がることもできないんだよ。
Oh, swell.
一部の親類はそれを感染ではないかと吹聴していて、私の発言力もすでに危うい。いや、私自身下手をすれば生贄にされかねないよ。そんな立場の私にはこれ以上ケイちゃんやレナの家をかばう発言は難しい。
I could see that Mion's writing had steadily grown more hastened and sloppy as it went on. I didn't even have to ask to understand how she must have felt.
これ以上Hinamizawaにとどまることは危険だと思う。少なくともこのまま自宅に閉じこもっていれば私たちはいずれ必ず殺される。だから明日の夜に村から脱出しようと思う。
Given the circumstances, why wait until tomorrow night? The sooner the better, right?
周囲は自衛隊に封鎖されているけど、園崎家は秘密のトンネルを持っていて、そのうちの一つが封鎖線の外に出口を持ってるの。このトンネルはバッチャの回復を待ちたかったけど、もう無理みたい。さっきバッチャに自分を置いて逃げろと言われたところ、バッチャはこの事態は古代の伝承の鬼ヶ淵の沼より鬼が溢れ出しの再来だと言ってる。今に村人たちに鬼が取り付き、村人が村人を殺し出す地獄絵図になると。伝承ではお社様がそれを収めてくれるんだけど、収めてくれるまでの間血みどろの争いが繰り返され、大勢の死者が出たと伝承に残している。私たちは殺されるよ。それで本題、今夜中にケイちゃんの家族に話して準備をさせて。明日の夜迎えに行くからみんなで脱出しよう。持ち物は現金、保険証や通帳、印鑑類、あと重すぎない範囲でリュックサックに着替えや日用品を詰め込んで。絶対に両手は開けること。靴はスニーカー等の履き慣れた歩きやすいもの。同じ手紙はレナにも送ってある。ケイちゃんにはあまりに突拍子もないことで多分現実感が伴わないと思う。でも信じて。私は御三家の集まりや町会の会合、そして無線で情報を集めていたから この村を取り巻く異常さがどれほどおかしいかよくわかってる。私と同じ危機感を持って。ケイちゃんが私を信じて全ての行動を共にしてくれても、私は自分とケイちゃん、レナ、その家族が全員無事でひなみ沢を脱出できる確率は 10% なら高い方と見積もってる。
Only a 10% possibility of survival? Fucking hell. That was the end of Mion's letter. Yeah, I'd say shit has officially hit the fan at this point. So, if you ask me, it'd be smart for us to just pack our shit and get out now before things have a chance to go even worse than they already are. Don't even bother waiting until tomorrow night. Just go now!
なんなんだよこれは。
This whole situation was too much for me to take in, so I gripped my head. Yet Mion had entrusted this letter to me and asked me to trust her, knowing I'd feel that way. Once I took 3 deep breaths, I was able to realize that the danger Mion spoke of wasn't too far-fetched. Considering the festering attitude that had filled Hinamizawa lately. But wait a minute, what about Sadako? I don't know about Rika, but are we gonna do anything about her? What she had written here was unmistakably true. At the same time, that made me fear for Sadako. It made sense the letter didn't mention Rika, who the SDF had in custody. Allegedly! Allegedly, it's the SDF that has her in custody. But there wasn't a single word written here about Sadako, who'd been left in this village all alone. The only names on it were mine and Reina's. There's no way Mion could have forgotten about the club members. So how do you explain the discrepancy? So there's no way she'd forget to mention Sadako. So then why? Is this letter a trap? Terrible imaginations assailed my mind, each of them trying to suffocate me. That's right. Mion already mentioned her. She told us there were those who seriously believed that Shirosama's anger would subside if Sadako were offered as a sacrifice. No way. Is Sadako... I shot up from my seat, and the metal bat leaning against the bookshelf fell down, stomping against my seat. Well, it's not a spiked bat, but hey, it's a bat. Take it. Uh-oh. Yeah, uh-oh is right, Espin. Uh-oh is right. It was almost like he was telling me to take it with me. We didn't see Mion deliver letter. Do we know it's her handwriting? Yeah, exactly. We didn't actually see, so the letter could be a trap. That was when I heard a gunshot. Oh shit. Oh shit. If this had been a normal, peaceful day, I would have assumed it was some kid having fun by setting off firecrackers or bottle rockets. But because we're in such an abnormal situation, I didn't make those wrong assumptions, encouraged as they were by times of peace. I opened my curtain and strained to peer into the darkness. When I heard another gunshot, you have the lights in your room turned off, right? You don't want your silhouette to show. It gives people a clear target to shoot at. It sounded like it was even closer this time. I thought I could hear someone shouting something nearby. Suddenly, our doorbell began ringing frantically. My mind became clear. All unnecessary noise vanished from my thoughts. Yeah, like I was saying before, I think we should just leave now. We should go rescue Sadako and get the hell out of Dodge now. Right freaking now. It felt like I didn't even need to breathe. And in that vacuum state, I picked up the metal bat at my feet and raced for the front door. Huh, nice sprite with the bat. At the entrance, I found my mom cowering and my dad running from the kitchen with a carving knife. Up until a moment ago, I would have thought it was strange for my dad to respond so violently. But in this exact moment, that actually felt like the proper response. My mom looked back at my dad, wondering if it was safe to open the door. He had her step away from it. The button for our doorbell was pressed at our gate, so whoever had pressed it had now come through our gate and was standing right in front of the house. Then there was a bang, 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 knocking violently on our door. My father shouted. They answered immediately. Oh good, let her in! I leapt out from behind my father. From the sound of Reina's voice, this was an emergency, and we needed to open the door right away. Even if we were plunged into a nightmare situation where the villagers had started a bloodbath, we club members would never doubt each other. Oh shit! Oh shit! Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we need to get out now! Reina was carrying a blood-soaked Mion, whose breathing was fading fast. Asking if she was alright was just a waste of time, not even a social courtesy. After that cry from Reina, we carried Mion in past our door and laid her down on the floor. Mion's left shoulder was badly injured, and her clothes were stained red with blood. Her clothes were supposed to be yellow. The shirt Mion loved to wear in her free time. That bright yellow shirt she always wore once school was over. That symbol of all our fun times together. That shirt that I was always happy to see. Was now completely stained a purest red. Mion was holding her wound with a handkerchief, but the blood continued to spill from it. Her handkerchief would have dripped blood if it were wrung out. It was impossible to tell what color or design it used to be, and whether it was Mion's favorite. My father asked, without putting away his knife. Reina frowned, having difficulty deciding where to even begin. Her expression made it clear that we didn't have time for her to explain. Yeah, you didn't need to... I mean, we were hearing gunshots close to the house. We gotta move. But did we even need an explanation? The bright red blood staining her body from when she carried Mion was better than any words at conveying the urgency of this situation. Also, we could soon explain it much faster than the explanation Reina might produce. Because moments later, we heard a tremendous bang outside her front door. Did she have a gunshot wound? We realized the situation without a moment to spare. She was shot! Someone had shot her outside our house! Reina spun around at the sound of that shot, all while raising the huge hatchet she had carried in one hand, even while carrying Mion. I admire your tenacity and your bravery, but you should not bring a hatchet and a bat to a gunfight. Just run! I gripped my bat and chased after Reina, my feet still bare. I didn't even hear my father calling for me behind us. Reina leapt on someone standing at our front gate, ruthlessly splitting his head open with her hatchet. Oh shit. The moment was unbelievable and all too short. Reina easily brandished her huge hatchet at another man and threw it at him with tremendous force. A silver glint of moonlight flashed off the blade as it soared into the man's face. The man let out a short cry as a small dark spray spewed from his head. My understanding of typical social morals made my brain want to shout, "What are you doing, Reina?" But I also wanted to know who was such a threat they warranted this reaction. Once Reina reached the man stumbling around for a hatchet in his face, she roughly yanked it out, then slammed the long hatchet into his head, over and over. Good lord. The man begged repeatedly for her to stop, but Reina didn't listen to him at all. Once she confirmed he wasn't moving anymore, she spoke.
人を殺すってことはね、自分も殺されることを覚悟するってことだよ。甘えるんじゃない。
It was almost like those words were meant for me. True words! All things considered, they really are. From Reina's perspective, I probably looked like I was still too accustomed to peace to understand the emergency we faced. But that was when Reina turned and shouted. The man Reina first defeated, the man that fired a gun at her front door, was still clutching his forehead and trying to stand. He was already injured so badly we could probably let him go, but that thought was probably just me clinging to peace. Reina didn't have that thought at all. That man was holding his head with one hand, but his other was still holding his hunting rifle. The threat this man posed wasn't dealt with if he could still pull the trigger on his gun. The thick lump of metal swung into him once more. This time, the man's head cracked open. I thought it already cracked open the first time. Reina turned back and glared. Glared at me. I was closest to that man, not Reina. Reina had shouted so I could take him down. Yet I stood there spacing out, so Reina attacked him. He'd had a gun. If he had been quicker, Reina couldn't have done anything from her position. That's why she entrusted him to me, but I just stood there blankly, still unable to grasp the situation. Her stern expression made me realize that, so I immediately apologized. Reina yanked her hatchet out of the man's head and picked up his gun with her other hand. When was the last time that we saw any of these characters actually kill people? Chapter 6 of the main story? Actually, wait, no, I gotta take the console arcs into account. So, the first few console arcs. So, if we're going by the chronological order in which I've done these stories. Either way, feels like it's been ages. And I still don't enjoy seeing it happen. Yeah. Might as well, he's not gonna need it anymore. Seriously, he's dead. Take the gun. Huh? Didn't Mion say she'd come tomorrow in the letter she wrote? There goes my false sense of security.
でも教えてくれ。一体何があったんだ。
What do you mean what happened? Isn't it obvious? I asked Reina as we ran back to my front door.
ケイチ君のところにも手紙が来たでしょ。みーちゃんは私の家にも同じ手紙を持ってきた。そこで夜回りの自警団に見つかって撃たれたんだよ。みーちゃんが何かしたわけじゃない。ただレナに手紙を持ってきただけなのに撃たれた。
And you chased her down, and then brought her to my house. Okay.
竜宮家は感染患者だから、そこに接触するのは感染者の仲間だって勝手に決めつけられて、一方的に撃たれた。みーちゃんが彼らに対し何かしたわけじゃないのに、構わずに撃たれた。
Where's Kasai and his shotgun when you need him? Yeah! We need your slug rounds, Kasai! Bring the slugs! Reina's eyes were full of anger and sadness as tears spilled down her cheeks. There wasn't anything I could say to her while she was possessed by those powerful emotions. Well, holy fuck. I didn't think things would actually get bad enough to where we're actually seeing Reina and possibly other members of the main cast killing people, but holy shit. Here we are. When we returned to my front door, Mion had been given a towel for the blood, and my mother was with her, helping her put pressure on the wound. My mother was all shook up. The only medicines we kept in the house were band-aids, headache medicine, and cold medicine at best. We didn't have anything to help treat a gunshot wound. You don't even have any isopropyl alcohol or something we can use to at least disinfect the wounds? Reina came back into our house with more blood spattered on her clothes and staining her hatchet. Given the commotion that just happened, my father understood everything once he saw the hunting rifle in Reina's hands. Once Reina understood that, he did too. She spoke.
おじさま、今すぐここから逃げなければ死にます。私のお父さんはもう殺されました。
Oh no!
さっきみーちゃんを助けようとして、あいつらはためらわなかった。
Well, shit! Your dad's dead. I guess that would definitely explain you going on a homicidal warpath at this point. Pretty justified, all things considered, given all this.
カラスか何かを追っ払うかのように、いとも簡単に撃った。信じられない。信じられない。
Yeah, I think we can probably write off any chances of our characters having to have a happy ending with this story arc. Mion's mouth opened feebly after hearing Reina's screams.
ごめん、レナ。私が閉じらなきゃ。本当に。みーちゃんは悪くないよ。そしてレナは誰も恨んでなんかいない。私が恨むべき人間は全員叱るべき生産をさせたもの。もちろんみーちゃんを撃った人にもね。
Well, I gotta say, you've gotten over this thing remarkably quick. Just moments ago, Reina watched her father get murdered and Mion get shot, and then she dragged herself out of that hell, where even her own life was in danger. The expression on her face was one I had never glimpsed in our daily life, and it made me realize just how hellish it had all been for her.
とにかくすぐに逃げる準備を。もうすぐみんな押し寄せてくる。
Why? What are the villagers coming here for? Get out of your shock and stupor, man, and just start running! What are they trying to do? Kill ya, you stupid freaking git! There was no need to ask for an answer from Mion's bloody mouth. That was why my father swallowed his confusion, and after clearing his throat, simply asked one thing.
逃げるってどこへ？
みーちゃんの家の秘密の地下に村人は誰も知らない隠しトンネルがあるんです。そこまで逃げ延びればなんとかなるかもって。
Reina explained what was written in the letter on Mion's behalf. Mion still tried to explain, but ended up coughing instead.
父さん、母さん、一刻の猶予もないよ。逃げよう。
そうだな。そうしよう。
My father registered the pressing danger, and it only took several seconds to abandon his morals as an average member of normal society before nodding. But my mother couldn't make a quick decision.
でも逃げたらこのうちはどうなるんですか？何が起こるかわからないのよ。
Homes and belongings can be replaced. Our lives can't. Just focus on surviving, and then rebuilding your lives after. If the villagers come here, they may very well burn our house down. But if my mother understood that, then her hesitation didn't make any sense. If they were willing to burn down our home, then what good would holing up inside do? Who knows what they would do to us then? My mother wasn't an idiot. Well, maybe that's exactly why she was so confused. At this moment, my father, who had been on edge since the first day of the quarantine, was the one acting reasonable. Still, my mother managed to regain some sense, so she went back in and grabbed only her handbag with our bank book. Don't forget the family seal! My father took the hunting rifle from Reina. He boasted that he knew how to handle one after using a similar type of air gun, but it was up to the listener to determine how reassuring that sounded. Not terribly reassuring, to be honest, as someone who's handled firearms before. Mion told us to leave her behind since she'd only slow us down. But Reina slapped her hard after that suggestion. Okay, Reina, I know you're stressed and you know you're going through a lot right now, as is everybody, but she's got bullet wounds. You don't need to slap her.
ダメだよ。兄ちゃんじゃなきゃ秘密の地下はわからない。軽々しく責任を放棄しないで。私たちを導いて。レナにかかっちゃおちおち死なせてももらえないや。
With us around, we're not gonna let you die at all if we can help it. It looked like Mion had recovered enough energy to talk back, at least. But we couldn't leave her wound untreated forever. If we don't get a proper doctor to look at her, then all that blood loss will lead to disaster. Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll be able to swing by the Irie clinic on the way over. And...
ねえみーちゃん、問答してる時間はないから素直に教えて。
Reina glared at Mion with a dry expression and asked her to do just one thing.
どうしてさとこちゃんを抜きにして脱出しようなんて言うの？
そうだ。それは俺も思ってた。サトコはどうしたんだよ、ミオ。状況的には俺やレナよりもずっとまずいんだろう。サトコだけ置いてなんかいけないぞ。
Wait. You're not gonna tell me something already happened to her, are you?
さとこは
Mion trailed off, but Reina wasn't allowing her to get away with just that. She better be okay.
死んだなら死んだってちゃんと言って。じゃなきゃ私はさとこちゃんは生きているって信じる。
Without thinking, I narrowed my eyes tight. That image of the worst possible outcome crossed my mind once more than once or twice. There's no way Mion would ever forget about Sadako. Yet her name was absent from the letters she wrote us. That left only one possible reason. Even I was able to imagine why. Please don't. But I couldn't put it into words.
さとこはさっきボートに連れ去られたらしい。話では鬼が淵に引き連れてったって。
3 days?
電車の
Submerging
生
her?
贄の儀に沿って3日かけて沈めて殺す気らしい。
Jesus Christ!
まだ生きてるんだな。
So at the very least, that means we have a chance to get to rescue her, right? Let's go then! Rain and I both latched on Mion at once. However, neither of us had any thought of blaming Mion for nearly abandoning Sadako. Mion used the information she was able to gather as a Sonozaki to make a logical decision, and after bitter deliberation, she decided she wouldn't be able to save her.
どうしようもない。どうしようもないんだよ。教会役員たちが音頭を取って神社部と青年部防犯部がさらに村の有志も加えて100人以上に膨れ上がってるらしい。防犯部には猟友会も合流してて少なくとも20丁以上のショットガンライフルで武装してる。
She wouldn't have stood a chance.
みんなお社様の名を連呼しながら狂気に取りつかれてるボートなんだよ。連中は容赦ない。里子をかばおうとした村人に躊躇なく発砲してる。
Please tell me that she at least managed to thin out their numbers a good bit with a bunch of traps or something.
兄ちゃんや私のお父さんのように。
Mion nodded bitterly as tears spilled from her eyes. She wept at her own lack of power to stop them, and for the lives lost to the villagers who still tried to uphold justice.
なんでかわかんないよ。みんなつい3日前までは普通だった。冷静だった。この72時間でみるみるおかしくなっていた。みんな目が血走ったようになって冷静さを失っていた。
3 days was all it took for things to deteriorate this badly, this quickly. That is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
自衛隊がいなくなったからおかしくなったんじゃない。その前からもうおかしかったんだよ。今や怖いのは殺人ウイルスなんかじゃない。村のみんななんだ。
Then again, considering that I and and the vast majority of the globe managed to endure a global lockdown for over 4 years without most of the rest of the world devolving into stuff like this, maybe this is just a skill issue on Hinamizawa's part. Just a skill issue. Okay, yeah, I know. I know. I'm just trying to make light of the situation right now because otherwise this is just not a good situation at all. Very depressing, very terrifying, and yeah, I'm just trying to cope with how bad things have gotten, okay?
私思うんだよ。このウイルスってさ、人を死に至らしめるんじゃなくて人を狂気に駆り立てるウイルスなんじゃないかなって。そして村人を次々鬼に変えていってお社様伝説をもう一度なぞり直すんだよ。
Well, here's a fun little bit of fan theory / canon welding I just thought up on the spot. What if a lot of the demons that we saw Hanyu slain in the Kotogushi arc could be seen as reinterpretations of humans going mad, like what we're seeing in this arc right here, and just causing mass riots and destruction? And the reason why they looked like actual demons in Kotoguchi is because we were viewing events that actually happened in Hanyu's life through a warped lens of sorts, a somewhat false recollection, where certain details were blurred and muddled. Just food for thought. Food for thought.
この事態を何とかできるのはお社様しかいない。そしてその生まれ変わりのリカちゃんはいない。それにそもそもお社様は神様なんだよ。人間じゃないんだよ。私たち人間には何もできないんだよ。何も。
I crouched down, and even knowing it would aggravate her wound, I held her head tight and let her hear my heartbeat.
ありがとうな。俺やレナが事態を把握できず、のんびりしている間にも、ミオンは村の裏側で妙なデマを抑えるためにいろいろと苦労していてくれたんだよな。だからきっと今日までミオンの頑張りがなかったら、いずれ迎えていたかもしれない惨劇の今日はとっくに俺たちを飲み込んでいた。
Long ago? We're talking like 72 hours here. Just 3 days. It's not that long.
だからありがとう、ミオン。
Mion was in the deepest ranks of the Sonozakis, and even though she's just a kid like us, she fought all this time. She fought against the overwhelming madness of the village up until the very end. With her efforts acknowledged, she cried into Keiichi's chest. The tears she was shedding now were slightly different than the ones she shed before.
レナ、ミオンを責めたい気持ちもあるだろうが。
責める気なんかないよ。それどころか朗報だと思ってる。
Rena said casually. She's a strange one. Understatement of the damn century. But that's why we love her. Seriously, where the hell is Kasai with slug-loaded shotguns when you need him? In fact, bring 2. Bring 4. Bring 4. Bring 20. Bring all the shotguns. Or better yet, a machine gun. A rocket launcher. Though it feels like the bigger the gamble, or the more dangerous the situation, the more composed she gets. Yeah, she does indeed work like that. Makes her damn terrifying at times when shit hits the fan. But again, that's why we all love her, right? Just like a blue flame. At first glance, it looks like it's just burning quietly, but it burns far hotter than the red one does. That's why I answered in turn.
ああ、そうだな。間違いなく、こいつは朗報だぜ。
What, about Sadako being alive? Well, yeah, but she's currently in the midst of a psychotic mob of villagers that are submerging her in a freaking swamp and are planning on extenuating the process for up to 3 whole freaking days. I personally don't consider that. I only consider that bad news with only a bit of silver lining to it, if anything. With the silver lining being the only good thing about it. There was a helicopter at the start of this arc, right? And in an alternate version of Arc 8, how did they plan to spread the airborne version? Yeah, I see what you mean. But hold up. That would mean then that the outbreak would have been started by the SDF or some government organization, right? If this seriously, what is this freaking virus? Because going by the behaviors of the villagers and all that here, one could be forgiven for thinking that we're dealing with some kind of strain of Hinamizawa syndrome affecting the whole village. But going by that little report that we saw a little while ago, that's not. Well, actually, wait. Hinamizawa syndrome would essentially be a strain of the it would be a strain of these parasites that were mentioned in that report. And I think the particular strain question for Hinamizawa, I think it's called N173, right? That's what they're calling Hinamizawa syndrome in this arc. So here's the problem, though. The theory posits that these parasites similar to Hinamizawa syndrome are already present within 99% of the human population. And I know I was saying earlier that we gotta take all the information that is presented in the report along with the accompanying research with a big grain of salt, considering what I reasoned out about these parasites allegedly having the ability to subconsciously affect the human host's behaviors. So you have to take, so if you take what is said in that report face value, then you have to take a lot of what that same report also says with a grain of salt. Then the only thing that I could see happening is if the SDF or some paramilitary force within the Japanese government had some kind of role in this outbreak emerging here, then what they probably unleashed, if they were using helicopters, is some kind of agent that would cause the latent parasites within people's bodies to start activating, and thus start developing symptoms within a very short time frame. And now that I think about it, the amount of time in which the villagers have started going mad matches the theory of Hifumi's theory as to what would happen if the Queen Carrier got killed. That the villagers would start to go insane within a 72-hour period of the Queen Carrier's death. Wait a minute. If that's what this is, Rika's dead, isn't she? She's dead. That's where they're gonna go with this. We're gonna find out probably towards the end that she's dead, and through her death, that information is going to be attributed to Hifumi's report about what would potentially happen to the Hinamizawa village's population if the Queen Carrier of the Hinamizawa syndrome dies, and it'll end up retroactively proving even that portion of the report correct. But here's the problem. We've already seen in other arcs in the main story that that's not what actually ends up happening either. So either this arc. So I don't know how this arc fits into canon, but if it's non-canonical, then I could easily just write this off as just a what-if scenario of what would potentially happen if Rika actually ended up dying, and we got to see a hypothetical scenario of what would happen to the village the Queen Carrier died and 72 hours pass. But then that begs the question then. But then, yeah, I know I'm kind of going a bit all over the place right now, but that's because I'm thinking of things as I'm talking. If that's what this is, then why aren't Reina, Keiichi's family, Mion, why haven't they started showing signs of madness? Why aren't they showing any signs of madness now? Because they would have been in the village long enough for Hinamizawa syndrome to have taken root inside their bodies. And if Rika's dead and 72 hours had passed, then they should be experiencing severe, lethal levels of symptoms by now, but they're not. Something's just not adding up here. Yeah, Rika's death doesn't trigger it, but with the helicopter, they could force it to break out. Yeah. But once again, if it's the helicopter that, if it's the helicopter that did it, that just goes back to what I was saying just a minute ago. If the helicopter did this, and what we're seeing is an outbreak of Hinamizawa syndrome, level 5 symptoms, then why aren't Keiichi, Reina, and Mion and those and Keiichi's family, Reina's dad, why haven't all of them started coming to madness around the same time as the rest of the villagers have been? You think we would have seen some sign of it by now, but we haven't. Again, something's just not adding up here. It's possible I'm missing it is possible I'm missing something here. I don't know what it is, if I am, but based on what I feel, on the information that we have now, and what I generally understand about Hinamizawa syndrome, none of this is making much sense.
Shikamo 72時間は生かしておいてくれるというおまけ付きだ。確かにこいつは朗報だぜ。
The bat I've been gripping began to grow hot in my grasp. Almost as if the bat had been immersed in a blazing fire, the heat stinging the palms of my hands. Yeah, I know, Satoshi. There's nothing to fear when even you get serious. One hit from this will smash their heads in.
Keiichi, まさか里子ちゃんを助け出すつもりなのか？
父さんは母さんと一緒にミオンを連れて裏口から逃げて、あとは俺とレナでやる。
ケイチ、おばさま、ごめんなさい。みーちゃんをよろしくお願いします。そして目を離さないでください。みーちゃんは美味しいところだけを持っていこうとするずるっこだから、のこのこと私たちを追いかけてくるかもしれない。大怪我してて辛いにもかかわらず。
The 72 hours probably isn't until 100% is affected, but rather a serious outbreak that will get on the news with people killing each other. Well, yeah, I guess from with that would make more sense. Because it's not like as though every single person that has Hinamizawa syndrome would have to necessarily start manifesting the same degree of symptoms within the same time frame, because everybody's body chemistry and everything is different. So symptoms would naturally, by design, in that hypothetical scenario, would manifest sooner or later than others. But yeah, you're correct when you view it from that lens. Like I said, it's possible I'm missing a few important details here. Well, I hate to break it to you, Mion, but you kinda are at the moment. Judging from Mion's current state, she didn't really have the energy to do that. But she'd never be so heartless as to silently watch us head off. Mion absolutely would try to follow us and provide backup, even if both of her legs were falling off. But we can't allow Mion to die. We're not going to lose a single one of our friends. We won't let that happen. And Mion is our leader. Without her, there'd be no one to wrangle us wild horses together. Besides, she's also the only one who knows how to escape from this village.
Kate!
みっともない顔すんなよ母さん。こういう時は気打ちして見送るもんだぜ。父さん、後で園崎家で会おうぜ。
ケイチたちも一緒に逃げるんだ。たった二人で立ち向かったところで。
おじさま、お気持ちは嬉しいけど、もう手遅れなんです。ほら。
What on earth is that? Reina flung open the door, and we heard the hustling movements of a huge crowd, chanting Orishiro-sama over and over like some creepy sutra. We wasted too much time dawdling. If we were all in top condition and ran full speed, then we would have the option of running away from here like my father suggested. But since my father wasn't used to thinking like we do in our club activities, he has a move behind. So as long as Mion was heavily wounded, we needed someone to buy time for them to take Mion and escape. And a normal person like my father, who still hadn't steeled his resolve after we were driven to this corner, wasn't going to be useful in the fight. This sound effect? Oh, you know this sound effect? It sounds familiar to me too, but I couldn't quite tell you where it's from. The bright farewell Reina and Keiichi left for his parents was almost the same as when they headed to school in the morning. But they didn't have their bags. Instead, they carried a hatchet and a metal bat. Who needs school bags when you got a hatchet and a bat? Every kid's bringing those to schools these days. Yes. Okay, so you do know that sound effect. Yeah, again, it sounds vaguely familiar to me too. I think I heard it. I think, now that I think about it, I think it's a stock sound effect I think I've heard in Silent Hill Origins. That's where I think I heard it from. Yeah, I probably could pull. I could probably pull up the relevant footage, but you know that'd be massive spoilers for that game. I don't know if you care about Silent Hill or anything like that, but yeah, I'm pretty positive I heard something similar to that sound effect in Silent Hill Origins. So that's probably definitely a stock sound effect that you can get from like a sound library or something that a lot of developers use for developing games. But they weren't wearing their uniforms either. No, what they wore was enough of a uniform. Their blood-soaked clothes were more than fitting a uniform for that mad and crimson night. I don't think I've ever seen that expression on Keiichi's face before this point. Not gonna lie, he manages to be almost as scary as Reina with her hatchet. Almost. We exited out the front and closed the door behind us, silently willing the others to run in that time. Beyond the door, there were the lights of several flashlights swaying like the breaths of ravenous beasts. Every one of them was chanting Orishiro-sama's name as they drew closer. There were probably the same number of people as our class. So what, about 20-something people?
20人ちょいか。連中勝てると思ってるかね。
Yeah, okay, so 20-something. I remembered right. Good.
思ってるんじゃないかな。まあ素人なら20人も群れればそう思うだろうね。
Well, if they all got guns, I'm sure they would. You know, in a realistic scenario.
バカな連中だぜ。穏便に済ましてりゃもう少し流らえただろうによ。
でもあいつらは間違いを犯した。
ああ、犯した。ミオンを撃った。サトコをさらった。我が部に手を出しちまった。こいつは絶体絶命のとんでもないミステイクだぜ。
Ren and I practically slid forward as we ran and hid behind the gate posts on the sides. Our quick movements were like a panther's after its prey. They certainly weren't the movements of a cornered rat. In this situation, it was. No, with the composure they showed, it was hard to tell who was being hunted.
なんでだろうね。私たちこれだけの人数を相手にするのに全然怖くないね。
それは確かに不思議だな。どうしてだろうな。
Hey, you know, it's funny. The last time I saw you two together like this, both wielding your current choice of weapons, it was during your rooftop scuffle in chapter 6. But you were fighting each other back then. And now here you are, under the moonlight, fighting with each other instead. How ironic fate can be. Actually, wait, does irony even work in this context? Probably not. No, I think what I wanted to really say is this is kind of poetic, in a way. If there was a world of dreams and daydreams, then in some other world, we must have already fought against much, much more powerful, frightening, and vast numbers. Yet we still overwhelmed them. The mountain poodles, anybody? So it didn't feel like we were going to lose to people like this.
ねえケイチ君、さっきみーちゃんの話を聞いてた。ケイチ君も朗報だって言ってくれたけどさ、私は他の意味でも朗報だって思ったよ。
Oh, yeah?
なんだよ、他の意味って。面白そうだから聞かせてくれ。いや、あるいは俺、もう気づいてるか。
Right now, Rena was wearing the same expression as me, and smiling with confidence.
ケイチ君の場合は気づいてるっていうより、別にそんなのは全くどうでもいいって感じかな。
教えてくれよ。レナにとってのもう一つの朗報ってやつをよ。
だってさ、敵は懲戒神社部と青年部と防犯部でだいたい100人ちょっとなんでしょ。それでさらに猟友会が加わって鉄砲が20丁以上。
やれやれ、まったくにもこいつはついてるぜ。敵がたったの100人程度だってんだからな。まったく足りちゃいないね。俺はてっきり村全部が敵でよ。Hinamizawa 2000人を丸々ぶっ潰すつもりだったから、あんまりの少なさに拍子抜けしまってたところだぜ。
Oh yeah, there is about 2,000 people in this village. So, relatively speaking, about 100-something people is actually not that big a portion of the population.
100人を72時間で、そして今ここにいるのが20人。
Two forces once opposed now stand together against a greater enemy. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it, Eastman.
バカにしてやがるぜ。まったくにもってバカにしてやがるぜ。本気の俺とレナを相手に100人を72時間でだって。
時間が余っちゃうかな。
むしろ足りないね。
やっぱり手こずる？
バカ、違うだろ。
I chuckled. Together we laughed. The 20 that picked a fight with Mion were drawing closer. Then they finally got in range to attack.
さてお楽しみだぜ。72時間たっぷり楽しませてもらおうじゃねえか。
さとこちゃん、待っててね。
The 3-day-long Crimson Tragedy was about to begin. Hey, even some of the goons have got sprites. It's pretty neat, actually. About time we got to see some more NPC sprites. Or NPC sprites, period. Holy shit, she lives! You're alive! And Hanyu's here. And oh my god, yes, you're okay. You're still okay too. Good. I love nonverbal communication like this. Oh shit, the village is on fire. And now it's in ruins. Did we do this? Did we set fire to a huge chunk of the village as we were pummeling every single person that came after us? Damn, Keiichi and Reina, you're hardcore. Okay, so I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break. I will return in just a few minutes. BRB. Alright, I'm back. So, I am going to be leaving to go make myself some food in about an hour. So, regardless of whether we get this thing done in that time or not, I will try to keep this going for about another hour. Then we'll bring this stream to a close. Wonder how much more we can accomplish in just an hour. The club members were stationed on a hill overlooking Okinomiya. There was Keiichi, Reina, and Mion. Also Rika and Sadako, who they rescued. Okay, so we did rescue Rika. They were all in worn-out clothes, covered in dirt stains and dust or otherwise soiled with blood. Those 3 bright red days were violently long, and passed by without a moment to spare on sleep. 3 whole days staying awake, just pummeling the crap out of people, until the village was set ablaze. Think of all the adrenaline that their bodies generated that was pumping through their veins. Dear God, they're gonna freaking collapse once all that wears off. All of them were there, without anyone missing. The ferocious battle certainly did take place. But to the club members, only the result, their victory, was important. The deadly combat that led to this point was no longer worth remembering. All that mattered was that everyone had safely gathered here. What was even more important than that was the sight of Okinomiya in the distance. Okinomiya looks a hell of a lot more run down and structurally different than I remember. It hadn't ended. From here it was plain to see that the madness hadn't remained limited to Hinamizawa. Well, that's unfortunate. But then again, this whole region was placed on quarantine, so I guess I shouldn't really be surprised that this did indeed affect other towns.
沖宮の町がうすうすそんな気はしていましたよ。まだまだ終わらないのですわね。
Apparently not.
ウイルス騒ぎは沖宮にだけ広がったのか、それとももっともっと広大な範囲に広がったのか。ここから見るだけ。
世界は滅びちまったわけなのか。
Well, considering the content of the report, again, I know, I cite that again, despite questioning its credibility, for reasons I've already gone into at length at this point. If you can actually take at least some of, if you can at least take a portion of that report, if not, God forbid, the whole report itself at face value, and trust everything that it says, then it's very possible that stuff like this could be happening all around the world. Worst case scenario. I don't see any evidence as to why it would be happening to such a grand scale. But imagine if it was. It's no zombie apocalypse, but I mean, when everybody is consumed by rage and madness, it's not really that much different from a 28 days later scenario, is it? So, yeah, I guess thinking about it, they really wouldn't be that much different from a zombie.
わからない。でも私たちはここにいる。ひなみ沢の人たちだって全員がおかしくなったわけじゃない。そうですわ。未だに冷静を保ってる人たちだってまだまだいますもの。沖宮にだってきっといるに決まってますわ。
偵察の必要があるかもね。
I agree. Scouting is best.
言うと思ったぜ。
世界が本当に滅びたのかどうか、私たちは見届けなきゃならない。
村は食料も生活必需品もなくなりかけてる。追っ手も巻いたけど村にとどまる理由もない。
Well, that's no good. Then for the people in the village that are still sane, they're gonna have to leave with the rest of you guys too if they want to, if they don't want to starve to death. Not good. So, the way I see it, given the circumstances, there's gonna be a mass exodus no matter what.
シオンさんが心配ですわ。
となりゃ決まりだな。行こうぜ。町へ。沖宮へ。
You okay there, Rika?
リカ？僕はここに残りますのです。
To act as a guiding figure for the village.
リカ。僕はひなみざわに残るのです。この騒ぎが落ち着いた時、彼らに戻るべき場所がここであることを教えるために。
But the SDF isn't going to come back. And food and water is starting to run out in the village. What are they going to do for food and water if you won't let them leave? Keiichi? Did you not bring your parents to safety? Did you abandon them? Oh yeah, that's right. We haven't seen where the parents are. Where's mommy and daddy, Keiichi? You didn't abandon the people that birthed and raised you to the mob, did you? Bad boy. You're a bad boy. I couldn't understand all of what Rika was saying. But I could understand she said she'd remain in the village by herself.
そんな危険でしたよ、リカ。まだ連中が私たちを探し回ってるに決まってますわ。大丈夫なのです。かくれんぼは得意なのですよ。ミパー。
Yeah, you could say that, and fortunately for her, she's got a literal guardian spirit watching over her. I'm sure she'll be okay, somehow. Rika smiled. I almost said smelled. Yeah, she smelled like she usually did. Okay, fucking hell. She smiled like she usually did, showing us that we had no chance of breaking her resolve. She smells like pure determination and resolve. Whatever the hell that smells like. Because Sadako was her best friend. She understood there was no convincing Rika once she gave us that look.
Rika-chan.
僕のことは気にしないでいいのです。それより世界を見てきてほしいのです。この騒ぎは終わりの始まりなのか、それとももう終わるのか、それを見届けてほしいのです。
After telling us that, Rika waved her hand goodbye. We all prayed for Rika's safety and then slowly set off. Behind us, Rika spoke with a beautiful smile and a clear voice.
ファイト、なのです。
Wait. Did it just end just like that? Or am I still in the arc? Okay, so I guess I wasn't actually supposed to see that intro until after I cleared it, and I didn't get a chance to read that. What did that even say? Interesting. I guess for some reason when I installed the mod, it decided to just enable the intro. Right out of the gate. So what did I just unlock? Is it this thing right here? So this is the Kamikashimashi chapter. Kamikashimashi. No, that's a bit of a tongue twister. Kamikashimashi. The tragedy spreads to Okinomiya with no end in sight. Who is behind all of this, and for what purpose? So you're telling me, going by that little sentence, that this is indeed a very intentional incident that somebody caused, this outbreak. So yeah, so I guess this is a continuation of the arc we just did, for sure. Can it be stopped? The tale of Higurashi outbreak includes here. Okay, yeah, now I remember. The Steam page mentioned this chapter 2. Difficulty is inhuman. Please watch over the club members' final battle. You say it's the final battle, but Higurashi Go's existence tells me otherwise. Okay. What do I want to do here? I wonder how long bus stop is. If I can get that done under an hour, but I don't know. You know what? Maybe I should just go ahead and actually just stop this here. And then I can figure out, well, maybe I'll actually say bus stop for last. Well, no. Actually, no. Yeah, I'm being hit with indecision. Not 100% sure what I want to do here, so let me check something. Hinamizawa bus stop. Bus stop. Place. Okay, so it's about a couple hours. Apparently. At minimum, I'm seeing ones that go up to about almost 3 hours. I guess it depends on a number of factors. Yeah, it looks to me like neither are. I would assume that it's the same for Kamikashimashi for sure, but it looks like Hinamizawa bus stop won't be something I can get done in under an hour. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and stop things here. And then the next time we come back to Ho Plus, I'll either start the Kamikashimashi or I will check out Bus Stop. But given that I think Bus Stop is going to be of a much shorter length than Kamikashimashi is going to be, this is just an assumption I'm making on my part. And given that this is definitely playing itself up to be a finale, yeah, I know, another finale for the cast, I think I'll check out Bus Stop first before we go to Kamikashimashi. And then we'll finish things off. With this arc right here. So, but why am I only seeing 3 arcs? I could have sworn there was more for Whole Plus. let me check something. Yeah, it's okay, good. I still have it up. So we have Outbreak, Kamikashi chapter. That's the one I just unlocked. Bus Stop When They Cry Origin. And then there's an additional scenario. Okay, so there's four. There's 4 scenarios total, but I'm only seeing 3 on the menu selection. So I don't know if it'll... So maybe it's just something that'll pop up after I complete the other 2 arcs. Guess I'll have to wait and see on that. So I guess it won't actually be a true finale in that sense, regardless of which one I end up doing first. But yeah, again, I think I'll still stick to I'll move the Bus Stop next as an interval between these 2 arcs here. Then I'll move on to Kamikashimashi, and then I'll see then after that if we'll unlock the 4th additional scenario and see what that one's all about. Either way, we got one arc out of 4 done, and it looks like we'll probably end up getting at least one other one done next time we come back. So 2 arcs and two streams. So we'd be halfway done with this thing. I say we'll be getting through this whole plus pretty reasonably quickly. Holy shit. I'm actually damn near the end of the sound novels, aren't I? I'm almost there. Holy hell. Still having trouble processing that little fact, but here we are. Anyway, I've gone on long enough, so I want to thank you, Espion, and anyone else who tuned into today's stream. I definitely enjoyed your company. I hope you had a good time with this first arc of Higurashi When They Cry Ho Plus. I'm definitely excited and quite curious to see what we'll be in for next time with Bus Stop. And yeah, you all have a fantastic day or evening or whatever part of the world that you happen to be in, and I will see you all next time. Take care and have a pleasant evening. Oh yeah, and the manga pages, Espion, yeah. I haven't forgotten those. I haven't forgotten those. I still got the files for those saved up here, so I'm still gonna check those out. But yeah, thank you for the reminder. Again, have a pleasant evening.